Okay. Commissioners, it's 10 o'clock.
If you want to move item 7,
Uh-huh.
which is a presentation, if you want to move it up right after the university's presentation, Paul just said that's fine. There's no action,
Okay,
so it can go before public.
good. Let's do that.
Okay.
Okay. Commissioners, it is 10 o'clock. I've obviously been banging the gavel too much because they didn't bring me one today. So we will call this meeting to order. Today is the Washoe County Commission Board of Commissioners, County Commissioners for January 23rd of 2018, and it is time to call our meeting to order. There, they finally brought me my gavel. So, and I would ask President Johnson, would you lead us in the pledge?
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much. Okay, Madam Clerk, roll call.
Thank you. Marcia Burke-Bigler, Chair.
Here.
Kitty Jung, Vice Chair.
Present.
Bob Lucy.
Here.
Von Hartung.
Present.
Jeannie Herman. County Manager John Slaughter.
Present.
Assistant District Attorney Paul Liparelli.
Here.
I'm Nancy Parent, County Clerk. You have a quorum, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. And we have with us today, number 3, Mr. Manager. Would you like to introduce our
I would. Item
speakers?
3 is a presentation and update from the College of Engineering. We have a number of individuals here. I would just invite, I'm not sure who's presenting, but whoever the first presenter is come up and make introductions, and we'll go from there.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Senator Gansert?
Yeah,
Welcome.
Thank you very
Good to see
much.
you.
Thank you. For the record, Heidi Gansert. I want to thank you for allowing us to present information about the University of Nevada, Reno's College of Engineering today. And with us we have President Mark Johnson from the university, Dr. Manos Manargakis, and Dr. Miles Greiner from the university. If we can start the presentation. Do you have it? There's just one slide. Thanks. I just wanted to give you some notes about the university more broadly. So as you know, we've been recognized as a Tier 1 university by U.S. News and World Report for several years. We've also been noted as a Best Global University by U.S. News, a top-tier worldwide university by the Wall Street Journal, and top 5 fastest flagship university as well. And I want to let you know that we've reached almost 22,000 students this year, this fall, and that our annual budget runs about $600 million. We're a very large enterprise in this community with an economic impact of $1.1 billion a year and growing. We have been working on extending or expanding our faculty by 400 faculty members through 2022, and we're well on our way. So that $1.1 billion is expected to grow to about $1.4 billion over the next several years. I also want to let you know that we have major construction underway, and I'm sure the College of Engineering will talk about their building, but we also have a new building for the College of Arts and a new dorm with over $500 million of construction since 2012. So that's another big economic driver in our community, and we're proud to say that we also have about 4,400 graduates each year. So now I'd like to turn it over to Dr. Manos Manargakis, who is the Dean of the College of Engineering. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Heidi.
Doctor,
I want to thank the Commission and specifically Commissioner Hartung for inviting us here for this great honor to talk a little bit about the college. I have had the pleasure, the honor actually, of leading the college for the past 9 years. And I can tell you that we have focused on a vision of national recognition. And we try to offer our students what we call a globally competitive engineering and computer science education. But we have realized that in order to accomplish this national vision, our first strategic goal should be to be the catalyst for the local economy. So we have reached out to the community as much as we can, and although I know that many more things need to happen, I think we have made great progress. As a result of all of this effort, the college, the last 9 years, has doubled in enrollments. Our faculty have increased from 58 to 92, and we are looking forward to the new engineering building, which is scheduled to break ground next June, and that will add a significant component to the College of Engineering, and will allow to accommodate the tremendous growth that we have experienced and the greater growth that is about to come. Our goals have been totally aligned with the state of Nevada economic development priorities. And we are certainly very happy to see that the many companies that come to the area are looking towards us and are hiring our graduates, and we are continuously getting their input in order to try to improve ourselves and offer the most competitive workforce than we can. One of the departments in the College of Engineering that has led the growth is the Mechanical Engineering Department. And with us today is the chair of the department, Professor Miles Greiner. And I would like to invite him in order to talk to you a little bit about this fast-growing department.
Thank you, Manos. It's a great honor to be here today. I also want to say that I'm very pleased to be a department chair at the University of Nevada, Reno. I feel like we're growing as we're talking, as Manos and Heidi have mentioned, but I think that the leadership, the upper administration has really helped to guide that growth, and has helped us. I mean, it may or may not be easy to grow, but growing in the right direction is a difficult thing to be able to do and say that we're doing well. I want to point out, I'm going to start talking about the Mechanical Engineering Department. And as you can see from this plot, our graduations are growing very rapidly. There was a period of time from 2000, this plot shows that before 2010, we were graduating about 45 students a year. And starting in 2011, something happened. Our graduation rate started really increasing, and so did our enrollments. At a certain point, both students and parents started realizing that their students wanted analytical or numerical degrees, and so chemistry, biology, engineering really grew. Mechanical engineering is a very broad degree, and so a lot of students have felt like this was a good place to start. So that's helped schools all over the country. But what's also happened for us in Nevada is that we're very close to California, and as you know, those schools are there's a large population, there's a number of schools, a lot of great schools. Many of them are impacted, so a number of students have come to UNR because they feel like this is a good education. And so while a lot of schools are growing, we're growing by quite a bit. You can see that we went from 45, and this last year we graduated 141. So we're hoping that these are providing employees for a growing economy here in Nevada. Some statistics there: about 1/8 of our graduates are from other states, about 1/4 of our freshmen are from other states. So it's really bringing people here. With the growth of our students, we've also been able to increase the number of faculty members through allocations from the upper administration. You can see for a long period of time we had 10 or 11 faculty members, and we're hiring 5 more this year. And projected, if we're successful with this search, we should have 22.5 faculty by the end of this next year. Of those 5 new faculty, 2 of them are going to be in aerospace. And this is a program that we think will be very popular with students and hopefully with industry, because there's a lot of reason to think that aerospace could find a good home in northern Nevada. So I want to say a few things about things that are growing. We're growing a lot of, educationally and in research, we're growing a lot of fields. I just want to say a few things about advanced manufacturing, education, and research. We have a new course that we're starting to offer now called Computer-Aided Design and Manufacture. And so one of the things they learn in that course is how to use 3-dimensional modeling to create, or sometimes it's called CAD, Computer-Aided Design, to create objects so that you can see it 2-dimensionally, but then you can move it around. And then what's also, and you can see there's the environment that people are using, and you can see a device right there, which looks a lot like a device that many of you have received already, one of these planetary gears. So This is, if somebody can show that little 3D printer, this is 3D printed using that data. A 3D printer, which you may or may not know, is a device, is a flat surface, a stage, and you can see there's a printer head, which is melting some plastic and depositing it. It's a little digital manufacturing. It's adding components to that. And you could build this device. This is a time lapse, so this would probably take 5 hours. But these were printed the same way. All these moving parts were printed on one pass. So this is the one of the new skills that our students are learning. So when we go back to that's part of the advanced manufacturing education. The College of Engineering has also just actually this semester began its new manufacturing quality minor, and this was developed in a collaboration with Tesla and Panasonic. We went to them, we said to them, what skills do your engineers need to be important to their new manufacturing facility? And you may know that it's manufacturing, so manufacturing quality is the topic of that new minor. So continuing with the idea of more hands-on education, I want to point out some things about our senior capstone design sequence. It's a 2-semester sequence that our seniors take at the end of their time at UNR. I mentioned before that 141 students graduated last year. This year, our senior class has 165 students in it. Mm-hmm. So we broke those students into 35 5-student teams, and the students are conceive, they design, they construct, test, and market products for both consumers and for industry. And so there's a lot of interaction between the local community and our students. The community likes this because sometimes they have a project they think this would be a good thing for students to work on, and so sometimes they like to mentor our students. In fact, what they also like to do is they like to interview our students. So this is like a 1-year interview for a lot of the companies to see who they want to interview, who is talented. And also our students get a lot because they see the environment of what it would be like to work for some of these people. So I would say a large fraction of the people who have mentored our students have ended up hiring, I was going to say purchasing our students. At the end of each year, the College of Engineering holds Innovation Day. And that'll be May 5th this year, May 4th, pardon me, and it'll be at Lawler Event Center. So this is the time when the capstone courses from all the departments, electrical, civil, all the departments exhibit there. A lot of industry comes to see our students and their projects. But not only that, but there are junior high school students, there are high school students that want to see a little bit more about what engineering is like. So we feel like this is a good way for us to introduce engineering to our students. Let me say a few more things about advanced manufacturing in the research area right now. There's a picture there of Leon Liao and one of his high-powered lasers that he's using. So you may or may not know that a lot of metal parts are used well, you probably know that they're used in a lot of devices. And one of the problems that happens, they get used for a while, sometimes they crack or they might corrode. And the way to avoid that, and these cracks normally form at the surfaces, so one of the ways to avoid that is to harden a surface. Hammering a surface is one way to harden it, and that's sort of an older technique, but now that people are using more advanced techniques, Leon's come up with a method for using high-powered lasers for hammering surfaces. It's called laser shot peening. You can see there's a cartoon on the upper right-hand side that shows that there's a laser hitting a metal surface, and that metal, that blue area is some plastic that the laser is basically vaporizing. It causes a little explosion that causes it to hammer it. And it's a very easily well-controlled process that you can use to harden the surfaces, which is and so that reduces corrosion and also cracking of the surfaces. Let me finish up by saying the last thing about that I'm going to talk about today is another development in our department has been the administration a couple years ago allocated $14 million to renovate the Polymer Engineering Building, which was built in 1941. It's an historic building, a great building, but very old. You can see in one of the pictures that in this process they completely gutted the building. They did a seismic retrofit so it would be safe in earthquakes. And they rebuilt it. And there's a lot of labs I could show you there, but the picture below that is a picture of our advanced manufacturing lab. You can see there's a lot of CNC, or computer numerically controlled machinery, students working in there. They work both on their design projects, on club projects, and also for our research projects that are done there. I'll finish up by showing a picture of the southeast corner of campus. You can see a picture of Evans Avenue snaking through, and the one on the left is a picture from the 1950s when Polymer was probably 10 years old. You can see it's circled there, it's all by itself. That was the only engineering building. And then on the right side, you can see the campus today, an aerial shot from about the same location. Can anybody find Polymer in there? Let's see, I guess this is not really working, but it's right in there. But it's the building that could. It's the only. It's now a small building, so it's really at the center of an engineering complex. And there's going to be a new engineering building a little bit off to the right there. So this is. We're very proud of this. This is, and you can imagine someone in 1941, 75 years ago, when Palmer is the only engineering building, would have taken a lot of imagination and leadership and vision to imagine that that would be the center of an engineering complex 75 years later, and that college would be the fastest growing college on the, at UNR, like it is today. It's fun to think about what might happen 75 years today, but who would have thought of that? I think the leadership of our college right now has that type of vision. I think that like I said, it's fun to think about what will happen 75 years from now. Thank you again for inviting us today.
Dr. Greiner, thank you very much for your presentation. It's very interesting and fascinating how much the university has grown in that period of time since the 1950s. So beautiful. Commissioner Hartung.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And as you know, my passion is infrastructure. And the key to a sustainable economy is good infrastructure, and the key to good infrastructure is solid engineering. These great folks will lead the way for us in all places, not just civil, not just mechanical, not just electrical, not just water, not just aerospace, not just chemical. There's so many places that engineering leads the way and gives us the solutions to many, in fact, virtually all of the problems. Everything that we do, everything we touch every day has engineering involved in it. The people used to say, and they still say, of course, if it's not grown, it's mined. Well, everything requires engineering. The miner and the farmer all required engineering. And I want to thank UNR for coming out and talking to us. I look forward to many more of these where they can talk about some of the advances that they're making. And as this commission has driven the community to have a sustainable economy and have an educated workforce, this is the basis for that. And so I'd like to thank them for taking time out of their busy days, all of them, Senator Gansert, Dr. Greiner, Dr. Margolis, President Johnson. Thank you so much for coming out. I am deeply in your debt for taking time. Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
You're welcome, Commissioner. And coming from me also, I would like to say the same thing, and I see that Commissioner Lucy has something he would like to say.
Thank you, Madam. Thank you, Madam Chair. You know, I also want to thank Senator Gansert and President Johnson and staff for coming, and Dean Margus and Dr. Greiner to come today. You know, I think UNR has been a wonderful partner of Washoe County, and we have worked for many years together successfully. And as an alumnus of UNR, watching that school transform over the last 20 years has been amazing. The growth is significant. The level of education that we're bringing to the area, the innovation that we're bringing to the area, the innovation campus down in town, a number of things that the UNR has offered is tremendous. What started as a very small agriculture college to satisfy many of the farmers and ranchers around there has transformed into an amazing educational center for the West Coast. So I commend all of you for all the work that you do and the consistency that you've added to their community. It's just amazing what's going on, and I look forward to continuing any projects we can help with in the future from a Washoe County standpoint. So thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Lucy. Any other? Commissioner Jung?
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. I would be remiss if I didn't also add, as the chair of the Board of Health, we have a terrific partnership with your Public Health Division, and many of our new hires start out as paid interns for us and then go on to a successful career, many, 20 years in, and we are still using that pipeline to make sure that we have great people that know how to do public health. So I wanted to say that, as well as thank you for this presentation. Maybe we should quarterly have a presentation from a different school from the campus that you'd like to highlight, because I think that one thing that, oh, you already talked about it? Great minds. And I want to highlight when you said aerospace would be so perfect for here, and I would agree. We worked very hard with your department to get some of those grants and to do the testing of the drones up at Stead Air Force Base. So this is perfect relationship. And it's interesting to me because when I'm an academic, I went to grad school, I taught at the community college level. Never did we talk about being a catalyst to the local economy. And I think that that is a change that is for the better in communities such as ours, in which we are experiencing a large amount of growth, especially in the technology sector, and that we should be responsive and anticipating that rather than kind of letting the students figure it out on their own. And as we know, in this community, many of the students don't leave. They stay right here. They're from here and they stay here. Where like where I went to college, there's not enough there to stay. There's no jobs there. But so I think that is brilliant, and I hope you're working, and I know you are, you're working with TMCC as well to create that pipeline and to make sure that more and more of our students are getting into the STEM subjects, especially females. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Jung. Always want to take a photograph here, so it's the photographer in our group here who wants to take a photograph. So yes, of course, we'll take a photograph.
Post it on Twitter and Facebook.
That's right.
Blast it out. Mr. Manager, go ahead, you're part of this.
Huh? Yeah, you look good. You and Paul. Paul's all. You have the similar colors. Yours is just a brighter blue, but he's got a Nevada tie-tack. And
You're a big deal.
Kind of a big deal.
Thank you.
You want to stand next to him? Oh, I know, he's not.
I'll stand down next to Heidi. All right. Here we go. 3, 2. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you guys so much. I appreciate it. It's good to see you.
Thanks again.
Great work. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Yeah, very interesting. Thank you very much. I think we're going to move number 7. Mr. Manager, you want to do that?
Yes. Madam Chair, item 7 is also an appearance. This is not an action item, so if the board is okay, we would move that item to our next item, which is an appearance, presentation update on Western Nevada Development District and project list. And we have the Executive Director and the President of WDD here to make the presentation.
Thank you very much, Councilman Lawson. We're very grateful to have you here this morning.
Thank you very much. And for the record, my name is Ed Lawson, Sparks City Council. But today I'm here on behalf of one of the many boards that all of us share, 26 or 8 of them that all of us serve on, or the elected officials around the valley. And I'm proud to be the president of the Western Nevada Development District, which is a 9-county coalition of like-minded folks that want to see economic development and make it easier to get federal dollars back into our local economy. So we're here to talk a little bit about the CEDS, which is the Certified Economic Development Strategy, and we're asking for participation from Washoe County to list those projects that you may want to see in the future. When you list the projects in the CEDS with all the rest of them, it shows you're part of the coalition, and that gives you extra points when it comes for matching funds type things. Ron's going to explain all that in more detail, because obviously I'm not an expert on that. But we want to thank you and just encourage you to put everything in the world. As Commissioner Burkbigler and I spoke about, you know, we're in Sparks. We are putting in everything we can think of that we might need for the lands bill. including infrastructure, piping, street lights, whatever we can think of that we may be able to get some matching funds from the government for, from the federal government. So with that, I'll introduce Ron. I mean, we won't take very long.
Thank you, Mr. Ratty. It's nice to see you this morning.
Good morning, Madam Chair, Commissioners. I'm Ron Rediel, Western Nevada Development District. I want to talk about our Comprehensive Economic Development Strategy update. And the CEDS, as we acronym always for things, is our regional planning document. It's something that the district has done since it was formed back in 1983 and certified as an economic development district in 1984. We do an annual update, which we're in the process of doing right now, and then we do a major rewrite and revision every 5 years, which is going to be coming up in 2019. The CEDS is a bottom-up, grassroots effort because our board of directors, which is comprised of elected officials, some staff from the various members, as well as private sector representatives, is the group that develops the CEDS. So we've already had one meeting where we had a really good discussion about the goals and strategies. And one of the goals that we have, one is called regional collaboration, where we want to have people in the region working together, because we all know what's going on in the region as far as economic development is having impact on schools, housing, infrastructure, workforce, just a multitude of impacts. So as they can work together, the local governments in particular can work together, they can address these issues. So one of the important things about the CEDS is when you as a public entity or a nonprofit are applying for funding from either a public or a private sector source, if you can show that your project that you're applying for is part of a multi-jurisdictional regional plan, you're going to get greater consideration and you may score some additional points. It's not a guarantee that you're going to get, would receive the funding as an example, but it also means that you could score some additional points. I'd like to focus on, I know we sent a 9-page document, but in particular on page 5, USDA Rural Development, in their program coming out of the 2014 Farm Bill, they can assign up to 20 additional points if your project meets one of the CEDS goals, or if it can meet one of the strategies, or it's listed in that project listing. These are some recent examples that I'm aware of in contacting the USDA office in Carson City. They have assigned extra points on at least 2 business and industry loan projects that they've done in Douglas and Churchill counties. There's another one that'll be going in Story County. And then Humboldt County utilized the CEDS to be able to score some additional points with their wastewater treatment plant improvements that they did a year ago. So this is an example of just USDA, but again, that CEDS, those goals, those strategies, those citations can be used for any application. We're going to go to page 7 of the handout that was provided. This will give you an example of some of the projects or the types of projects that go into our project listing as part of our update. These are somewhat generic. They are from a number of the different counties from the last updates that we've done. Some of them, or most of them, will be related to infrastructure in particular, but again, there may be some other initiatives or other types of projects that you might want to implement and have listed. For example, the last one is outreach for local and regional economic development and job creation efforts. Main Street programs, some of the communities and some of the members are ramping up to do Main Street programs. And that would cover, a Main Street program would involve infrastructure, would involve some economic development, those kinds of things. So again, we are asking the members to provide us with projects that they would like to have included in our project listing to go into the SEDS. These can be either short-term or they can be long-term. And we've had some really long-term projects included in the SEDS, such as the continued construction or reconstruction of the V&T Railway. That's been something that we've had as part of our project listing. And that, as you are aware, is an ongoing project, I think, since the feasibility study that the district did in 1992 and actual construction starting in about 2001, but it's there. So with that, that's rather brief, rather quick, but I would entertain any questions, and I'm sure Ed, as board president, would also entertain some questions.
Thank you, Mr. Radil. Commissioners, any questions? Commissioner Hartung.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I noticed that Humboldt got $9,030,000 for water and wastewater treatment.
Yes.
So why hasn't Washoe County applied for some of this assistance? I mean, I was not aware, sadly. I have not been involved in this particular group, but boy, I wish I would have known, because we have great need, as Mr. Lawson and I have talked, and I've talked to everyone about water in a circular economy and how we can treat our water and use it multiple times and treat our water to a higher standard. And I know we have some real need out at Tumwharf. So I'm pleased to see that some money was given. I'm sad that we weren't part of that food chain.
When you're making the applications, you always have to look at eligibility, because when we work on project applications, are you eligible? Is there a match? And are you going to be able to provide the match? Those are the two basic questions that we really ask at the district regarding a project application. In the case of USDA, they've got some cutoffs on population issues, 10,000, 20,000, and 50,000. So some parts of the county may be eligible, some parts may not be, based on that population criteria.
I see.
So again, that's the first question we ask. Is this project eligible? Are you eligible as a public entity to make those kinds of applications?
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Commissioner Hartung. Any other commissioner comments? Commissioner Jung.
Now, with that being said, that there's population constraints for some of this, the dollars, is that in every situation, or could we ask you to put on this, your SED, a funding mechanism to develop a master plan for homelessness countywide, or are we too big to do such a thing?
Again, that depends on the source of funding you may be looking at.
Okay.
However, to include it as part of the project list, I would most definitely say yes, because there may be some private sector funding.
Sure.
That could be part of that project. There could be some public sector. That's why, again, I always say, look at the eligibility. Are you eligible as an entity to make those kinds of applications?
Okay, and who serves on WNDD with you from our board?
Jennifer, Rose, and Jeannie.
Oh, okay. So let's make sure we're coordinating this and that our voice is in there and our projects.
Definitely.
So that we're not missing out, because like Commissioner Hartung said, we had no idea that there was eligibility for this and that we could have maybe.
And this is kind of fun too, because
Say it in the microphone.
We just became, Washoe County just became eligible to be in the Western Nevada Development District 4 or 5 years ago? 2012. So it's a short time that we've actually been in the development district. And it's been a little feeling out process for me, especially because automatically for me, it's economic development. I jumped in with both feet, but we've been trying to figure it out. So the key, and I think what Commissioner Hartung was getting at, is it depends on your funding source as to how much money you can get. Right. So like for the rurals, they have more access to that USDA type stuff. But we have access to different pots of money that they don't have access to. So this is where getting our projects on the list, and if you go to WNDD.org and look at the webpage there and go through the project list, Douglas County does an awesome job of listing everything in the kitchen sink in there. And I'm trying to get Sparks in Reno and Washoe to do the same thing because we have a tremendous amount of stuff. And if there's a way for us to get some of our own federal dollars back, to me, that's a win-win.
I can't agree anymore, and can we get on board with you yesterday, and we'll start coming up with some of our projects? I think basically you're telling us to dream big and see where we might fall in that. And I also want to bring to the attention of this board, because Mr. Raydale and Councilman Lawson, President Lawson, isn't bragging enough about your economic development summit that you do every year. And you had one year it was up here, this year it was down in Vegas, and can you speak a little bit about that? Because I think that the community needs to know how this came from, I mean, I would almost say single-handedly from, I can't remember her name right now.
Cheryl Gonzalez.
Gonzalez. Miss Gonzalez really did this all by herself.
Yeah, this was the little economic development conference that could. I mean,
the little one.
It was a little one that turned into a big one, and Cheryl had the dream of making it big, and so we had it at UNR 2 years ago. We just had it at UNLV this last year. We're in the process of forming a 501c3 so that this will continue on in perpetuity. We actually have a meeting with some more people for more sponsorships this Friday or next Friday. So we're pretty excited about that economic development conference. We're probably going to get away from the universities and move off campus to someplace more private, because the universities, and I understand exactly why, don't want us to talk about marijuana type industries, and for us that's a big deal. I know in Sparks it's going to be a big stopgap measure in taxes. We're running about 2 times what we anticipated. I'm sure you guys are in the same boat. So that is something that we need to address as elected officials going down the road. So that will be part of the next conference.
We, I think I can say with some certainty, we'd be happy to sponsor again and help with any of your printing if necessary, because this event is, I mean, it's packed. It was packed 2 years ago at UNR, and it was from morning till evening. Nobody flocked away. It was such a, and it was the first in the whole state that Ms. Gonzalez put together. So I think that's something that I want to help you with the 501c3 and the whole bit. I would love to be involved with that, because it was a little tiny conference that turned into a major, and we attract people internationally to come and speak to us about this. So whatever I can do to help, please let me know.
Thank you.
August 20th, 21st, and 22nd is when we have the conference date scheduled. It's going to be at the Atlantis. We are working on some really cool things, in my opinion, for the first day on the 20th. We don't have them solidified, so I don't want to really get off there into those. But this will be the 4th year of this conference. And this grew out of our Stronger Economies Together program back in 2012. So, and like Ed said, we want to, get it off into a 501c3 so that it's on its own, and we think we can do that. 4 years, that's not bad. I really don't think so. So, okay.
Commissioner Lucy.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And Councilman Lawson and Mr. Riddell, I want to thank you both for coming and presenting today. This is a wonderful bit of information. I knew very little about the Western Nevada Development District, just other than it existed, but not the wonderful work that you seem to be doing. You brought up a number of times, Mr. Lawson, in regards to the lands bill that currently we're working on here at Washoe County. And it proves relevant to our discussion today because Yesterday, I had the opportunity to travel to Cedarville to meet with a number of our residents in northern Washoe County, and some of the challenges they're going through in regards to our inability to service that area adequately. You know, those kinds of projects that are really truly in rural in nature that would qualify for USDA funding through Farms Bill, and there is going to be a Farm Bill update this year that they're currently working, that Congress is working on. But we'd like to have those kind of discussions now so that we can suitably, you know, help those ranchers in the northern part of the county. Also, I mean, from our northern border all the way down, talk about stormwater drainage districts, to different things of that nature that are great in magnitude that can help all the entities, and truly. And I think that this is a wonderful thing. I'd like to get more involved, and you know, Councilman Lawson and I both serve on the RCVA board. Might as well put it at the convention center in future years. You know, lots of meeting rooms and lots of different things we could do there, and it's a space that is readily available that all of us participate in. So there wouldn't be a reason why another entity shouldn't take advantage of an entity, one that we already utilize. So something to look forward to, and hopefully I can work with Councilman Lawson on that as well. So thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Lucy. You know, Mr. Manager, I think this brings forth some interesting discussion that perhaps I don't know if we have any room on our agenda for our meeting coming up on Friday, but our retreat coming up on Friday, but or workshop coming up on Friday. But if we, this might be something that we want to work with staff to make sure that there are some projects out there that we could brainstorm and get on this list. And so, but we want to, staff is pretty much overloaded, so we want to make sure we start talking about them sooner rather than later. So if we could get that on an agenda somehow, if we need to do it online and in public. Thank you two very, very much. Very interesting. Again, I'm sort of like everybody else. I knew about WNDD, but never really knew all of the stuff that was going on. And I was at the conference 2 years ago. It was excellent. And so I am looking forward to the conference coming up in August. Thank you very much. Commissioner Hartung has one more thing.
Just by way of comment only, you know, we have a replant from Douglas County who should be able to help us with some of this. Christine Valetich.
Oh, that's right. Poor Christine.
They're a good grant writer will pay for themselves 100-fold over. So
Yeah.
Don't we know that?
This is a great source of income and the matching funds that we, as the bigger cities in Nevada, have the advantage that we have some of that matching fund where they don't in more of the rurals to do some of the matching funds. So it's a great opportunity. I'm very excited about it for Washoe County and Sparks and Reno. I think we're looking pretty good for the future. And I know we're getting a lot of heat right now over our growth, but we're going to catch up. We're going to catch up, and we have some forward-thinking people, and you guys are part of that. So thank you.
Thank you, gentlemen, very much for coming. Appreciate it.
Hang on a
Have a great day.
Hang on a second. Hang on a
Oh,
second.
hang on a second.
Hi.
Commissioner John.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. That reminds me, one of the speakers, could we put on this list, one of the speakers that came 2 years ago I brought this up everywhere and have never found anybody that will pay for this. He is the one that is known internationally when cities are experiencing a boom in growth, who actually goes to those communities and asks and does a lot of survey and data to make sure not only are we planning and approving housing and retail and commercial that the new residents will actually use, but also soliciting input from the existing residents, how we want to look like in our growth. So could the CED maybe pay for that or help us match with that? And I don't know who would own it, maybe Washoe County, maybe regional planning. If just kind of think about that, and we'll talk about this more on Friday, but I think that would be a boom for both of us, for Sparks and Reno, in terms of, and the entire county, but certainly the dense area that is going to have some heartache and suffering from it. And also we want to be able to anticipate we don't have empty box stores because the new people don't go to box stores, right? So I think if we could, I'd really like to get that taken care of sooner than later. Thank you, Madam Chairwoman.
Thank you, Commissioner Jung. Appreciate it. Thanks, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Appreciate your time. Thank you for coming. Mr. Manager.
Our next item is item 4, which is public comment. Comment heard under this item is limited to 3 minutes per person, may pertain to matters both on and off the commission agenda. Commission also hears public comment during individual action items, with comment limited to 3 minutes per person, and comments are to be made to the commission as a whole.
Thank you. I have several people on the list, so we will start with Ms. Tammy Holtstill, and then after that, Ms. Arian Overly. Sorry if I messed that up.
And we do need the overhead, please.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Could we have the overhead, please?
Good morning, Commissioners. Tammy Holtstill, Lemon Valley Swan Lake Recovery Committee. The water's still there. I'm still here for the record. Here is a current aerial photo that was taken of Swan Lake this weekend. As you can see, the threat is still there. And also from what I see from that photo is the Washoe County Sewer Plant. It is in the 100-year floodplain, which it never should have been, based upon NRS statute, and that it is sinking daily because of the generation and the acceptance of additional affluent water being put into that lake. It's wasting good money after bad money. I have a question. How can you accept and generate additional affluent water and put it in a place where your banks are overflowing? Doesn't have any common sense to it. The next photo you see is the electrical poles. There's more wasted money. I was told that these were to save money, and they're still not connected and being used in the proper manner. They're just sitting there. More wasted money. This is another photo of the water leaking on Lemon Drive going towards the Red Pine residence. It was stated to me that they are watching the situation to see before they do anything. So what are you going to do? Wait until it's like Pompeii? Then there comes the next situation, which is the lack of enforcement on Lemon Drive. This happened there at Palace, where the pipes go over the road. As you can see, that person was going too fast. Without having the proper enforcement there, more situations like this is going to happen, and one of these days they're going to hit those pumps. I'd also like to know where the long-term mitigation plan is for this situation, and when is it going to be implemented? What happened to Commissioner Herman's plan to assist the residents? Not just 9 of them. She put it out to you as a resident, and there has been nothing said about it. It has not been put on the agenda, and it's common sense. Instead of helping 9 people, you're helping a lot more. I think that wrapup.com has sized up this commission pretty good. The best is all commissioners take campaign contributions from developers. There's no point in making an issue of it. Well, look at Lemon Valley. Really, there is an issue. It's time to start looking at what needs to be done for the residents. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Arian Overly, please tell me how to pronounce that. It's a beautiful name. Aria. Thank you very much.
Hello. Thank you so much for having me. My name is Aria Overly, and I'm here on behalf of the Reno Area Alliance for the Homeless, also known as RAW, to bring to your attention that the annual PIT count, or the point-in-time count, is happening this week. RAW is comprised of a number of community stakeholders invested in preventing and ending homelessness in the Truckee Meadows. These stakeholders are from Reno, Sparks, and Washoe County, and include representatives from law enforcement, business, providers, the faith-based community, nonprofits, and policymakers, as well as people who are experiencing homeless or have experienced homelessness in the past. Since 2000, the annual point-in-time count has been used to apply for HUD funding, to draw down emergency solution grant and continuum of care funding. The count is also used by nonprofits to write grants and design responsive programming, and by policymakers to decide how to strengthen our community. The PIT count is a HUD requirement, and meeting this requirement brings in over $1.5 million annually to our community. The planning began in September, and the count itself will take place on January 25th, 2018, this Thursday, and continue through Friday. And although there are HUD requirements, the count is designed by our community for our community. There is a street count of the unsheltered, for which we must use HUD's definition of homelessness. There is a shelter count as well, which includes emergency shelters and transitional housing. In addition, we have collaboratively customized our approach to best meet our community's needs. For example, we conduct a motel count to understand the number of seniors, children, and adults living in motels, which provides a picture of a picture of those who are underhoused. We also conduct interviews of families, youth, and adults. Interviews are designed with different questions based on what providers need to know about the populations that they serve. Neither the motel count nor the interviews are required by HUD. We also work with the Eddie House and the Nevada Youth Empowerment Project to count the number of homeless youth in our area. The adult and the youth counts are done simultaneously. The results of the PIT count are distributed to all interested community members to shed light on the changing housing landscape and help us understand how issues like affordability, availability, and the overall market are impacting housing for those who are most vulnerable. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. Chris Feldman, and then Mr. Paul Hurtado after that.
Is it okay if Paul goes first?
Either way.
Okay. Can I hand you this before my class?
No, please give it to the clerk. Okay, would you go to the microphone and?
You're going to want to look at that while I'm talking.
Okay, well then I'll go.
Okay.
All right.
Thank you.
Well, it's nice to be here. I've never participated in this kind of an event. It's nice that we have this opportunity. So my name is Chris Feldman. I'm a U.S. citizen. My wife and I moved here about 10 years ago. We raised two, I think, beautiful, wonderful children here. And we came here because we're both professors in the sciences at UNR. We think UNR is a wonderful place. I'm really proud of Reno. And I tell anyone who will listen that Reno is one of the best kept secrets in the West. Come out here and move here. As I said, I'm a biology professor. I've got over 20 years of experience working with wild animals as an educator, a researcher, and a conservation biologist. And I'm also co-director of the new Museum of Natural History at UNR. And so this is a museum that a colleague and I created about 3 years ago. It houses priceless specimens from throughout Nevada, some of them hundreds of years old that we've put in museums. And we've also created this really nice public exhibit space where we bring in K through 12 students and their teachers. We've had about 18,000 from our community the last 3 years come through, and we do public outreach events. And one of the things that we do is we work with local reptile keepers in our community so that they can bring in animal ambassadors, things like lizards, snakes, tortoises. And I can't tell you how meaningful and powerful these opportunities are for the kids. When they can embrace and interact with these, quote, exotic animals, it really changes their perspective on natural things. They get a sense of wonder about science, nature, the natural world. And these are really powerful events. And so the reason I'm here is just to work with you guys and make sure that these changes, this new law, isn't too onerous on these reptile keepers, because they really do provide a service for me and the students, K through 12 kids that I'm interacting with. And so Paul has some very specific recommendations that I would hope you would work with Paul. He's done a great job trying to figure this out. But maybe we can change some of these things so that instead of a permitting process, there's simply a license. I would like to see that these larger, quote, constrictors are moved to this tier 1 level, because I really don't think these are dangerous animals, and these animals really make an impact on the kids. They just have this wow factor, and they really help demystify these amazing animals. Other things I think Paul will talk about as well, but I'm just here to support these guys and let you know that we don't want to marginalize these people in our community. They really do a good service, and these are really neat animals that I love seeing our local kids interact with. So that's all I have to say, and thank you for listening to my comments. And thank you, Commissioner Hartung, for your heartfelt comments about science.
Thank you, Mr. Feldman. Mr. Hurtado?
Yeah, thanks. So hi, I'm Paul Hurtado. I'm here as a citizen of Washoe to comment on Chapter 55. I can't make it later, sorry. But I should also mention that I have relevant expertise as a professor at UNR, as faculty in the graduate program in ecology, evolution, and conservation biology at UNR, plus years of experience working alongside biologists, exotic animal vets, public health experts, and so on in the context of mostly infectious disease research. In my mind, the number one factor that will determine whether or not these regulations improve the health and safety of people and pets in Washoe County is compliance. These permit changes don't affect me personally, but I want my kids to live in a place that's safe and animal friendly. We love Reno. We just kind of want it to stay like that. I'm concerned that this proposed permitting process will result in substantial non-compliance, making Washoe County less safe and decrease the quality of animal care in Washoe County. But I've identified a few straightforward changes to the code that I think will correct a large number of these problems and some concerns others have raised. Importantly, these things basically allow animal control to enforce the current code, the draft as it is, but add some flexibility to reduce the regulatory burden and streamline their own work on a case-by-case basis. I strongly urge you to look at these carefully and implement them in the revisions. So a quick summary on page 2. Number 1, basically Tier 1's pretty ambiguously defined to include animals customarily sold in retail pet stores. Also, animals not explicitly listed in the code default to Tier 1 if they're cold-blooded, Tier 2 otherwise. I think a simple way to fix all of this is to just remove the word cold-blooded from the Tier 1 definition and omit item 6 from the Tier 2 definition so that all animals, not just cold-blooded animals that are not explicitly listed in Tier 2 and Tier 3 fall in Tier 1. This will greatly clarify things for citizens. Number 2, on enclosures, one size fits all doesn't work very well for these very broad categories of animals that we're talking about, right? Like all marsupials. And that's why, things like the standards that are used to regulate our nation's top zoos and aquariums don't specify blanket cage dimensions. They instead focus on just making sure that the cages meet the specific needs of the animals, okay? So I think a very good compromise, short of scrapping the detailed enclosure requirements that we have in the draft, is to add flexibility to them by allowing veterinarian-approved exemptions to these default enclosure requirements, and that will just ensure the highest possible level of human safety and animal care on a case-by-case basis and also better accommodate animal owners. I've spelled out some additional options to improve reptile enclosures in cage 3, which I'll just let you guys take a look at. Number 4 is a win-win for everybody. I think you should let animal control issue permits for longer than a year up to the lifetime of the animal, the way that we license dogs and cats right now. That'll streamline their workflow and that'll make it less onerous for animal owners. Number 5, also to increase compliance, I really think it's essential to make liability insurance more flexible. Simply adding up to the stated amounts to this language would allow animal control to have some flexibility to reduce or waive those really high liability insurance requirements on a case-by-case basis for Tier 2 and 3 animals. I would further urge you to consider dropping the Tier 2 insurance requirement altogether. I know that there's some reasons that you don't want to do that, but this will, I think, really help with compliance, and that will get those people in the door, making sure they have those animals in proper, safe, and healthy enclosures. Number 6, Gila monsters and beaded lizards are not quite Tier 3 venomous. Thank you for your time.
Mr. Hurtado, appreciate it. Thank you for coming forward. Next is Mr. John Potash, and then Mr. Tim Stoffel. Good morning, Mr. Potash.
Good morning, Commissioners. I'll have a more detailed speech like that for the agenda item, but for right now, I just wanted to state that it was pointed out to me at the last meeting that some of us might have come across as rather adversarial, and I kind of see that looking back, but that certainly was not the intent. What it was basically us showing our frustration, our tremendous frustration in this whole thing. As the actual stakeholders in this, we have been dismissed, disregarded, insulted, demeaned, deceived, and manipulated throughout this entire process. While talking about holding extra meetings and workshops with us to give the appearance of cooperation, they don't really tell what happened during and after those meetings, and I have addressed some of those issues before. As subject matter experts, which we really are, we've had to sit in silence in the audience as staff, gives their side of the story, offering excuses and sometimes mistruths to some of your questions. And usually this happens after public comment has been made, so we don't have an opportunity to refute any of this until after you guys have already voted. We take time away from our work, family, friends, animals, spend hours here waiting to stand in front of you, pouring our hearts out. In exchange, you know, we are treated unprofessionally, we're insulted. So, of course, we're very frustrated throughout this entire process that's been going on for years now. Now, while not waiving our rights to challenge any procedural impropriety, we did want to acknowledge and show our appreciation how some of you have objectively viewed certain aspects and recognized some of our concerns. Unfortunately, it seems for each concern that is removed, a new bad change ends up taking its place. So even though it seems like, it makes it seem as though we're just never happy, and that's certainly not the case. What we're concerned with is the way we've been treated throughout this process and just the overbroad use of police state power. Just to be absolutely clear, we are still willing and have always been willing to work together to find reasonable compromise that will achieve the duties of the county while not alienating the stakeholders. I do truly believe we can reach reasonable compromise. What you have before you today is still not there. There's still unreasonableness in there. It still violates citizens' rights. And some of it actually creates animal welfare concerns. So if this does pass today, you know, it'll most likely result in actions that I think everybody would rather avoid. If the true purpose is to protect the public, know where animals are, and achieve greater compliance by animal owners, this code is not the answer. Compliance is already low due to difficult standards and people fearing losing their animals, which is evidenced by the last few denials. All right, thank you very much.
Oh. Yeah, we can't hear the buzzer up here. Mr. Stoffel.
Tim Stoffel, 10515 Trail Drive, Reno, Nevada. I am handing out to you a list of, it's a summary of kind of what everybody's been talking about today. We'll talk about as we're talking about the Chapter 55 changes. I want to applaud the Commission for taking the very bold step last week to remove the breeding ban from there, which is an extremely objectionable thing and is just you know, detrimental to the species and shows kind of where this is all coming from, the animal rights people. But there's still an awful lot that needs to be worked on in this bill, and the 5 major points are outlined in this document. This will give you some time to read it when you have a moment before we actually get to that item. And I'm not going to spend a lot of time on these. Instead, I want to just talk about regulation. I had conversation with one of the commissioners between this thing, and the discussion had to do with, you know, well, there's an awful lot of non-compliance in the county. Why do you think there's, you know, non-compliance? It's because somebody wrote bad rules. So what's the solution to that? Well, let's just add more regulations and more rules. Is that really the answer to the thing? I think what we really need to do is see, you know, this isn't working. Maybe we need to do something different. Mr. Potash and Mr. Hurtado both had some excellent ideas about how to do this. And we have to remember that we already have an existing body of law that covers a lot of these standards and stuff like that already. Why these have worked all along. Animal Services has consistently refused to show us that there's any kind of a demonstrable problem with the existing regulations. So the thing is, you know, why are we trying to re-engineer them or retool them or stuff like that? In the meantime, you know, the one change that could really make a significant difference for public safety they did not put in there that we requested. That was to require perimeter fences around Class 3 cats. And you know, statistics have shown that that kind of fencing has reduced the national incident rate to basically 0. And but they didn't put that in. Instead, they put in ridiculous insurance requirements, permitting requirements, and one hot button issue is the fact that you know, they've tried to do away with the animal control board so that they can sit there and make their own decisions internally with no checks or you know, people having to answer them. And you know, it's basically what's going to result. If you want an exotic animal in this county, you better be prepared for litigation. I don't think that's what people want. I think we need to go back and revisit this and make it work. Make Animal Services work with us instead of just suggesting it. It's time that we get this stuff straightened out. It's been said that, oh, we've been dragging this on for 4 years. Well, if we have to take another 4 years to make it right, so be it, because animal ownership is a very, very important right and responsibility of all people. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Stoffel. Next, Mr. Phil Goss, and then Mr. Garth Elliott. Welcome, Mr. Goss.
Thank you, Commissioners, and good afternoon. Apparently, third time's the charm. I was Mr. Gross 2 years ago, I was Mr. Gross 2 weeks ago, and today I'm finally Mr. Goss. So thanks for that. Again, I'm Phil Goss, President of the United States Association of Reptile Keepers. We are a registered federal nonprofit 501c6 working for responsible reptile and amphibian keepers across the nation. I've held this job for over 5 years now. I've been to dozens of these meetings. 2 weeks ago was the first time that I'd ever been to one of these meetings on an exotic animal ordinance where not a single member of the general public or an animal rights personnel didn't show up to speak in favor of the ordinance. There was nobody here speaking in favor of the ordinance who was a member of the general public 2 weeks ago. Many Washoe County residents showed up, spent their entire day here. They voiced their opposition. We just didn't see that from absolutely anybody else. Again, 0 people arrived to speak in support of this. Please realize that with most laws, the goal is to punish criminals. This ordinance is overbearing and instead punishes those who want to be in compliance and are trying to be responsible. Others will simply ignore the law, and likely it will never be known that they have these animals, which is not the intent for revising the ordinance. While it may seem those appearing to speak are against any ordinance, that is not the case, and there is less than a handful of sticking points. I'm sure these can be easily ironed out with a true workshop. The last one I attended over 3 years ago, again, it was not any type of, there was no work involved. They were presented with the ordinance and 0 input was taken from the stakeholders who appeared. Stakeholders simply want an ordinance to which they can become compliant without any new and heavy economic damages and overreaching regulations. It seems that unfortunately we have come to a point where it's us versus them based upon past actions. The old head of animal services is no longer around, and I think that has a lot to do with this. Hopefully we can overcome that, build a working relationship with animal services field supervisor, the new Officer Lehman, and get to the proper ordinance on the books. Please vote no today and request this to happen. I know that it has been 3 years, but that is not a valid reason to pass a bad law. A couple things I'd like to point out. I'll be back again to speak on the actual agenda item on this ordinance. But the liability insurance, I know, is a huge sticking point. It was discussed last time, but it was actually not revised in the new clean draft where it was discussed to have a blanket coverage. It still reads per animal. So for some of these people, that could possibly be $5,000 to $10,000 annually for keeping rattlesnakes, which are taught dogs to actually avoid rattlesnakes, so actually providing a public service. So that really needs to be looked at again. Again, I just looked at the draft that's posted on the agenda item that was not changed even though it was discussed. Also, this insurance, people have lost their homeowners policies because of getting this insurance, and that liability insurance really needs to be researched a little bit farther. Thank you for your time, and I'll see you in a little bit.
Thank you, Mr. Goss. Mr. Elliott.
Good morning, Commissioners. For the record, Garth Elliott. It's a bonus day for me. I was only planning on one item, now I got a bunch of them. So by the time today's over, you'll really be sick of me. Where do I start? The agenda today is loaded with don't leave us alone. I'm a libertarian, and I think government should leave us alone. So now you're going after our calves, you're going after our dogs, our kitties, our snakes, our hedgehogs. Everything under the sun is being assaulted by our county, and that shouldn't be that way. Let's get to the calves. I'll be back for that. Sun Valley Cab has been in existence since the 70s. Yet a few years ago, you said, well, let's get rid of the Sun Valley Cab, among a few others. Now we've got a framework of it back, but we're still not there. You've done something great in one sense in allowing GID members to sit on the cab also, which has been problematic in the past, but what did you do? You moved the meeting night to the GID meeting night. So the cab meeting nights and the GID meeting nights are the same.
second Thursday of the month. That's got to be fixed. And I'll let you know right now, since you've made this decision and put it in paper, I will be applying to get back on the cab. I was on for 5 years and got off to allow Hispanic representation for the cab, which I thought was very, very necessary for Sun Valley with 38% Hispanic populace. I got off to let a Hispanic girl get on, and then what did she do? She walked across, or wanted to walk across the United States and not go to the cab, and got off of it, so it was for naught. So basically, leave us alone. And I've been saying this since I've been coming here since the 90s, a few years before Sam. And no, I haven't saved Burning Man here. I save it somewhere else. Anyhow, good luck. But again, the first time this came up with the animals, you were mainly worried about huge lions and tigers and bears and everything else. Now you're worried about little dinky kitties and little dinky snakes. So somewhere our priorities are way off. One more thing, you say we don't have the money for the cabs? Well, remember, Washoe County is not an employment agency. A few years ago, you divested yourself of many employees. Please, it seems like weekly you bring more back. So one employee would finance the whole cab program. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Elliott. So I have no more public comment signed in, so we will close public comment and bring it back to the board. Mr. Manager.
Our next item is item 5, which is Commissioner and County Manager's announcements, reports, updates, requests for information, or topics for future agendas.
Do you have anything, Mr. Manager?
I do. I just wanted to mention on regarding time management today, and just for everyone's sake, looking at the agenda, it appears that the board does have a closed session that they're going to do over the noon hour. So it would appear that items 15 and 16, which are the public hearings, if it's okay with the board, I think we should just announce that that will not occur before 1:30. So,
okay.
So if that's okay with the board, we would make that announcement that
okay.
items 15 and 16 will not occur before 1:30 this afternoon.
Okay, because we also have a legal session and we have a closed session. So we will take a break approximately at noon and do that, and then we will be back and do the public hearings at no sooner than 1:30. So anything else, Mr. Manager? Mr. Commissioner Hartung, anything?
I'm sure there's others, but I'm happy to go first.
Oh, so, well, let me go to Commissioner Lucy since he signed in. Commissioner Lucy.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just a couple things I want to bring up. I'd like to bring back to this board some progress in regards to the Washoe County Economic Development and Conservation Lands Bill. This last week, I participated in a meeting on last Thursday in Cedarville, California, which is the closest location to VIA for us to meet with the BLM and what would be the Environmental Stewardship Program meeting with the BLM. What it is it's a conglomeration of individuals from that area that talk about a number of different issues, ranging from wild horses to different conservation, invasive species. So it does play into our lands bill. It was very much a very productive conversation with those individuals at BLM prior to the government shutdown. So we were able to have that discussion with them. Hopefully they will issue us some recommendations. Hopefully that we'll be able to collect by the end of February as we continue to work through the stakeholder meetings. Myself and staff members are continuing to do those stakeholder meetings. We also participated. I held a meeting. I didn't hold a meeting. We were invited to participate in a meeting held by the ranchers in the northern on yesterday. So myself and Jamie Rodriguez from staff participated in that and met with the VIA residents and their concerns in regards to their needs in regards to the lands bill and what they would like to see come out of that, because many of those individuals up there are permittees that utilize grazing rights in northern part of the county. Also, many ranchers and and different needs that they have. Obviously, we talked to some members from, I talked to Diane Stobiecki, who is the Via Conservation District representative for us that sits in place of Commissioner Herman up there. Some wonderful information that we received from them. A couple other things, during my drive up there, I want to point out, Honey Lake, just north of here, is also a terminal basin and is chock full of water. Chock full of water. A number of terminal basins from here to the Oregon border are full of water, and not seeing any kind of emptying anytime soon. It has been a challenge that we've seen here in northern Nevada. It's obviously a challenge that we see in California, and it looks like, as to my understanding, and I'm just looking from the outside looking in, that none of these areas, none of these counties have figured out a solution to getting rid of this water. And so it is a challenge that a number of these counties are looking at. And if anybody can find a solution to getting this water out of these terminal basins, we're all in. But it doesn't seem like any of those counties in our neighboring counties have found those solutions. And so I'd just like to point out that that is something that I have done. I have driven through northern Nevada. I have driven through northern California. I have seen these terminal basins, and they're not fixed, and they're not getting fixed, because they can't be fixed. And so I would just ask that we continue the work that we're doing for our residents to try to help and mitigate, but realistically understanding that there are just no way of getting rid of some of this water. One last thing, on a positive note, we had the Wild Sheep Show in town, which is it's a hunting show that brings a number of people to our area. We've had it for almost 25 years now, and it brought over 2,000 different people to the area, many of which are high-end hunters and travelers throughout the country. So many people from Spain, Australia, visit our community, and it was a wonderfully attended show. I got the opportunity to meet with the Nevada Department of Wildlife Deputy Director, and then also the Arizona Department of Wildlife Deputy Director, who provided me quite a bit of information in regards to our lands bill, in regards to hunters and anglers and their challenges in regards to wilderness areas and what they've done in other states. So that was a wonderful opportunity to meet with those individuals. But once again, RSCVA served as a wonderful host to this amazing show, and hopefully people got out to see it. We're off to a great 2018 with cyclocross, with U.S. Cycling, with Wild Sheep Show. We look forward to a number of great shows and different things coming to our area in the near future, but all have been positive thus far. So that's all in my report, ma'am.
Thank you, Commissioner Lucy. Good report. Okay, now Commissioner Hartung.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I will start off by thanking Commissioner Lucy for traveling to Cedarville in my stead. It was on my calendar, and I was pleased that he went and I didn't have to. It's a 4-hour drive, so thank you, young man. I'm very appreciative, but I'm happy to go at any time. I have just one major thing that I would like to bring attention to, and that is I received my current alarm ordinance fee bill. It was dated December 18th. I did not receive it until December 29th. I promptly paid it on, the money was extracted from my account on January the 4th, 2018. Yesterday, which would be the 22nd, I received another bill from them for the alarm ordinance, and it tells me, by the way, that the invoice date was January 15th now. So my concern is that this is just it's a different route to try to get people to pay multiple times, and especially if my wife happened to take care of one and then I saw the second and thought, oh my goodness, I'll pay it again. we have no solution here, and I'm becoming frustrated with these guys, Mr. Manager. So I know that we're working with the SO to try to resolve this, but it's frustrating at best. I attended my first RTC meeting this last Friday. Commissioner Lucy and I were there. I am thrilled that RTC is now looking at our transit routes and looking at trying to modify them so that we can get the greatest amount of ridership, because what we're seeing a drop in ridership now. And so I don't think it's elimination of routes. I think that there's just some new strategies potentially, as opposed to having what I call the 92-foot buses, with one or two people. That's correct, Commissioner Jung, where we can possibly interject some smaller buses that are more nimble in traffic and will be far more responsive. Yes, thank you. And so I'm looking forward to seeing some of the solutions and potentially even changing the routes midday to flex those to address some issues that we have with senior citizens and others trying to get to medical appointments and et cetera. So I was very, very pleased that the RTC is now revisiting that issue with transit, because we have a good transit system. I just think it's become ineffective because we have just things. There's been some changes, and that's not a pejorative comment about the RTC, but there's just changes in the economy. What we've seen, which is something that Commissioner Jung has pointed out, affordability of housing. And a lot of the bus routes were on affordable routes, and now those houses are no longer affordable, and so you're seeing a difference in ridership. And so it's good that the RTC is now revisiting that. So that's all I have for now, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Commissioner Herman. Commissioner Hartung, sorry about that. Vice Chair Jung.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. I wanted to piggyback on Commissioner Lucy's comments. I heard a breaking news report this morning on NPR about how much our visitor rate has gone up in the valley here in terms of when we were really suffering, and how our SCBA and your efforts and the region's efforts to make this a tourist-friendly location to visit, and the numbers are way up. So congratulations on that for sure. I represented us at Maccabee Arms. Mr. Sharon Oren invited me to meet and greet the Medal of Honor recipient, Donald Doc Ballard, who was in town, and his whole giving back that he's doing now as a retiree is doing suicide prevention with veterans coming back from areas of conflict. So it's really special to be able to meet somebody of that distinction. A young woman was here mentioning the homeless count and time that we do every year. A few years ago, nobody was really doing it until the activists got involved, and when they were doing the homeless youth count, which impacts the federal money that we get by what we can prove what we need. A few years ago, they said there were 3 homeless youth. That's 16 to 24. So I'm wearing the bracelet for it. It's called the Homeless Youth Count Point in Time. It's January 25th. Which is my birthday. And so I'm asking everybody, rather than a birthday present, which I don't expect any birthday present from anybody, but if you were so feeling that way, I ask that the Eddie House's 3 top needs that the youth ask for, 16 to 24 homeless youth, is socks, new clean socks, new underwear, and not tighty-whities if it's for the boys, they won't wear them, and deodorant. That's their top 3 things. So if you would like to donate that and leave it in my office, I'm happy to take it down there. I have my mom making baked beans, her famous baked beans, because the homeless youth at the Eddie House only eat what they can put in a microwave. They're not a commercial kitchen. So bringing a hot dish, I'm going to bring a hot taco salad dish. So you can either, if you would be so moved, you can either bring me some socks, underwear, and deodorant, or a hot dish, and I will be happy to take it down there when I volunteer on Thursday. I'm sure Hurricane Sandy did, because she's wonderful. She took 5,500 snack bars.
That's their need a month, is like
Oh, they need 5,500 snack bars, but Sandy brought 10,100. Just kidding. Just kidding. I know she would have. So I encourage you to either come down there and volunteer, buy socks, underwear, and deodorant, or make a hot dish, and I will be delivering that after the Board of Health meeting, which is on Thursday as well. Thank you, Madam Chairwoman.
Thank you, Vice Chairman Jung. Commissioner Herman.
Okay. I was in Cedarville as well yesterday because I was up there. I needed to speak to my Conservation District people and made a 2-hole-in-1 or whatever. I'm not a golfer. And last Friday, John and I were there at the NACO meeting to view the changing of the guard and president, and we were missing all the rest of the members of the board, that, so anyhow, I just wanted to report in. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Commissioner Herman. Commissioner Hartung.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and Commissioner Herman I appreciate her attending the meeting. She brought up something very important. Both Commissioner Lucy and I were at the RTC meeting because the NACO meeting changed its date, and it conflicted with RTC. So that was the reason why we were unable to attend. But what I would like to ask for in the not-too-distant future is, let's, in fact, hopefully the next meeting, Mr. Manager, let's look at all of those boards that could have an alternate, and let's appoint alternates, so that in the event that there is a date change, which has nothing to do with the members of this commission, that it can be accommodated by someone in case there's an important vote that needs to be made. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Commissioner Herman. Anybody else for a second round?
Hartung.
I mean, Hartung. I did that again. I keep looking at her name.
We look the same.
Excuse me. I'm sorry. Not nice. Commissioner Hartung, thank you very much. Good comments. Good point, I think. Commissioner Lucy.
Yes, and thank you. And Madam and Commissioner Herman brings up a very good point. Obviously NACO did change the meeting date this time based upon challenges that the outgoing President Johnson, Kevin Johnson, are from NACO, and incoming Lawrence Weekly, Vice President-elect, could do. So that's why they had to change those dates. I did email both of the individuals thanking our past president and our president-elect, and sharing my condolences of not having to be there. But I'm glad that Commissioner Herman and Manager Slaughter were there to participate on behalf of NACO, because they will be very important in regards to our lands bill going forward, and they've been a very tremendous help, and I look forward to that. So good well wishes to Commissioner Weekly with his and actually NACO will be hosted a number of times now in Las Vegas in the future dates this year, so we will have to travel to Vegas to attend those said meetings to meet with our southern compatriots. So just things to look forward to kind of tag on to what Commissioner Hartung was saying. We need to probably address some of those so we have proper travel plans and available to do so. So thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Lucy. Commissioner Hartung, I still have you on my list. Are you wanting to speak again? No, I'm sorry. Okay. Okay. With that, we will close number 5 and move on to the consent items. Number 6, Mr. Manager.
Madam Chair, item 6 is your consent agenda, and today it's represented with items 6A1 through 6H2.
Commissioners, anyone want to? Commissioner Jung.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. What I would like to do, I don't have anything to pull out, but I would like to acknowledge item 6F2. We're going to, via the Second Judicial District Court, they received a bequest of $9,500 from the estate of Deborah Lee Lumpkes, and that is going to the CASA program, which is the court-appointed special advocate, which are the eyes and ears, when the social workers can't be the eyes and ears, that advocate for the children that are placed in foster care, and a very important program that is all run by volunteers as well. So this money will be used to make sure that the this program is continuing to run, and we really appreciate the estate of Ms. Lumpkes to have this type of compassion for children in her passing. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other?
You mentioned 6F1 also.
6F1?
You just want to mention that one?
Well, that's the grant.
Grant. Also, 6F1, we are getting a grant of $10,000, which requires no county match, and it's going to the Second Judicial District Court, also from the Lee F. Del Grande Foundation, and it's going to be for the Family Peace Center, and I don't know if you're aware of what that is, but in family court, which is a tough court, I don't know who'd ever want to be a family court judge, the Peace Center is where people that are divorcing each other and going over custody issues, this is a center where they're taught peaceful mediation and communication skills, and that's where some of the visitation is also done. So we really appreciate that as well from the Lee F. Del Grande Foundation. Thank you, Madam Chairwoman.
Thank you, Commissioner. Vice Chairman Jung. Okay, Commissioners, anything else? Do we have any public comment? I see none listed. Okay, we have no public comment. I need a motion. I have a motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. And we have done 7, so I believe we are on to a block vote. Commissioner Jung, or Vice Chairman Jung.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. I have in block 8, 10, 11, and 12.
Okay, Mr. Manager, would you like to read those, please?
I move that to be in the block vote.
Okay, do I have a second? I have a motion and a second. Now, Mr. Manager.
Item 8 is a recommendation to approve the updated Washoe County Grant Management Conflict of Interest Policy and guidelines for requesting and accepting donations. Item 10 is a recommendation to approve Washoe County American with Disabilities Act policy. Item 11 is a recommendation to approve receipt of AB 519 funding through the Nevada Secretary of State grant retroactive to July 1, 2017 through June 2019 in the amount of $1,700,000 with no county match required for the purchase of voting system hardware and software for the Registrar of Voters Office, approve interfund appropriation transfers to track grant and capital funds, and direct the Comptroller's Office to make necessary appropriation transfers and budget amendments. And item 12 is a recommendation to approve the purchase of 3-year licensing renewal retroactive from January 15, 2018 to January 14, 2021 for the McAfee Endpoint Security Software Suite at a cost of $257,256.50 from CW Government.
Thank you, Mr. Manager. Do we have any public comment on any of those? It's okay.
No, ma'am. There's no public comment.
Okay, we have
Thank
no
you.
public comment. We have a motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye, and please cast your vote. Opposed? Motion carries. Please check your vote. Please notice that, please, for the record, notice that Vice Chairman Jung is not voting, is not here at the dais right at the moment, and the motion carries. Thank you. Mr. Manager, I think we're at 9.
That would take us to item 9, and this is acknowledge update from staff and to provide possible direction to staff on Citizen Advisory Board CAB program. Action may include adoption of new CAB meeting schedule beginning March 2018, as well as direction to develop a policy relating to General Improvement District members' ability to sit on CABs, increasing training opportunities for CAB members at CAB meetings, improve the notification process for CAB meetings, facilitate planning staff attendance at relevant CAB meetings, and CAB member access to planning staff members in the pre-meeting period, provide appropriate audio and visual equipment at CAB meetings, improve access to venues hosting CAB meetings, and develop alternative channels of communication between the public and commissioners for matters of interest to the CABs that are not related to particular development or land use proposals. And Assistant County Manager Dave Solero was here to present this item.
Mr. Solero.
Good morning. For the record, Dave Solero, Assistant County Manager. Just a short little discussion this morning, hopefully around citizens advisory boards. I thought it was important to understand exactly what a citizen advisory board is. There's a lot of misinformation regarding kind of the history of CABs and what they really mean to Washoe County. But under Nevada revised statutes, Citizens Advisory Board, in this instance, by your action, you can create a board to advise, to gain advice for anything you'd like study or advice on. So specific to Washoe County, we have 9 citizen advisory boards who are to provide feedback and two-way communication between the community and the elected officials, or in some instances the Planning Commission and the Board of Adjustment, so that decisions can be made in a way that gathers the information from the public. That's important because the Citizens Advisory Board is here to provide advice to our Planning Commission, our Board of Adjustment, potentially our Open Space and Parks Commission, to you, the Board of County Commissioners. Where we get some pushback from some of the communities, I want to hear from RTC and NDOT and some of these other places where our advisory boards don't have any advisory capacity to those boards. So I just wanted to bring that up as far as kind of what an advisory board is. Along those lines, Washoe County in 2015, the Board of County Commissioners updated the bylaws for the CABs. The important parts here really is this is a tool to solicit concerns from citizens at the neighborhood level for feedback related specifically right now to land use planning, development, and related concerns within Washoe County's jurisdiction, the area that we have jurisdiction over. We have used citizen advisory boards in the past to gather information on what other jurisdictions are doing and those types of things, but we've really tried to streamline this process so that this is really specific to Washoe County's needs and interests from our citizens for you, the decision makers. Another item, is clarification that the meetings are intended to address emerging planning and development issues within the geographic boundary of the CABs, again, within Washoe County's jurisdiction. And then currently the CABs are run out of the manager's office. That was a change made kind of through the downturn after we'd done a community engagement process that came back with the recommendations that the CABs is a tool for planning and development type projects. We've heard a lot of concerns through public comment from, you've heard them yourselves, that CAB meetings are canceled, the CAB meetings need to be consistently held, that there's no information from outside entities on the agendas, there's no way to speak directly with a commissioner, and no way to engage the public in conversations that are valuable and significant to the decision-making process. So as I've dug into CABs and tried to really define what a CAB ought to be within Washoe County, the guidelines of what we've got, to try to get some good direction from you, we actually sat down with the CAB chairs. And some of the items that we heard from them is, again, they would like increased frequency of CAB meetings, alignment of CAB meetings with development review process, increased training opportunities, notification, increased access to planning staff, provisions for portable speakers. Sometimes at these meetings it's difficult to hear what's actually going on, access to facilities, and a venue for non-development related matters for the community to understand. I mean, that's the issue. That's the instance where we can provide information in a different form than a CAB meeting. A CAB meeting is also held to the standards of open meeting law, so it becomes very difficult to have conversations with commissioners and staff members if the items are not directly on the agenda. So the bold items up here are things that we think that we can provide to the CAB through this process when I get to the recommendations from staff for you all. One of those is a new CAB schedule. The new CAB schedule is based on development, kind of the last 2 years worth of CAB meetings, attendance at those meetings, types of meetings that were canceled. But this really aligns with our planning division intake dates, so that right now, part of the process is we have a CAB meeting, those notes end up as an attachment to a staff report instead of being incorporated into the staff report that goes forward to the Planning Commission or the Board of Adjustment. If we can adjust those dates, we can actually get that input through staff into the staff report as recommendations to the Planning Commission, the Board of Adjustment, or yourselves. This also allows for nearly all development projects to be heard at the CAB. One of the concerns we've heard is the developers try to skirt the issue, try to get on a meeting date that doesn't have a CAB associated with it. But this will allow us, because of those intake dates, to be able to make sure that the developers have the opportunity to come talk to the citizens at a CAB meeting about their projects. This will allow for an increased opportunity for the CABs, training opportunity for the CAB chair on how to run meetings, for staff on how to present at meetings, for the community on really what a CAB meeting is for, and some education there as well. We will have, hopefully, planning staff. If this, if we move forward with this process, planning staff that will actually present at the CAB meeting instead of being members of the audience. It will be very similar to the way staff attends Planning Commission, Board of Adjustment, and these meetings, where they present the item in a neutral way, talking about what the item is, allow the applicant to be able to assist as well. However, to get that information in front of the CAB so the CAB understands what action is being sought by the applicant. Sometimes that is not well understood, and it's a way for our staff to help educate the community on what it means to be good stewards of planning in the community, and how those projects can be adjusted, what types of things we can ask of the development or the developer versus those things that are by right in the land. So it's really an education process on planning topics. There's a potential, if we can move forward with this as a tool for gaining the input from the community on planning-related topics, to shift this out of the manager's office into the Planning and Development or Planning and Building Division of the Community Services Department, to help streamline with the notification of agendas, notification of meetings, gathering all of that information, getting it into a process of development application, code change application, a little bit more efficient than trying to do it out of the manager's office. And then also, one of the things we heard is we want to be able to communicate with commissioners and others about our concerns in the community. We will create a process to actually capture that public comment, and through our 311 system, be able to send that out through our departments within the county to answer those questions, follow back up with the constituent that may have asked that during public comment, or get the information to the right contact at a different agency, such as NDOT, RTC, the airport authority, whomever that may be. As that comes up, we can capture that information and get it to the right people. So what do these enhancements not offer? Really is a venue for others to brief the community on their process, or gather input from others within the community. One of the things we heard during the community engagement process, while we took a brief hiatus from CABs, was that the meetings are too long. There's too much information on there. I really want to be there to hear certain items. So, with some exceptions, I'm sure there are things that, if they're community-based, they are community need for information, we can certainly have someone give an informational update. But again, the CABs are for gathering community input for things that you all and our boards and commissions have purview over, not necessarily purview over something that NDOT may be doing. But there's an opportunity, potentially on a quarterly basis or some others, to get information out to the community that is important to Washoe County citizens. Again, it is not a venue for public to discuss and get answers about other general topics. This is a very difficult thing for, to be in compliance with open meeting laws. And then there's not a guarantee that we're going to have meetings, because if we're focusing on development type projects and those just aren't there, it's very difficult for Washoe County to host a meeting and not have a topic to talk about and spend taxpayer money on that. So that's kind of what the guarantees, or what these enhancements do not offer. So along those lines, staff has some recommendations, which would be to allow the CAB program to remain as a tool to solicit feedback from the community specific to development projects and topics. That again will include some still cancellation of CABs moving forward. We'd like to adjust the schedules of the CABs so that we have 4 CABs that meet monthly, and the additional 5 would meet quarterly. And this is based on development type projects that have been identified, and kind of our master plan where we feel that development is actually going to occur. This will really get the developers the ability to come and talk about their projects nearly every single project, because even if we have a quarterly meeting, we can still have special meetings specific to development projects. Shift the CAB program to the Community Services Department to help streamline with development education and notification. And then the last item is a policy discussion by the board whether GID members should serve as CAB members as well. This is something that has come up in conversations at the board. There is not currently a Nevada revised statute that limits whether a person can sit on a GID board and a CAB. It really would come down to a policy by you, the board. So I would request, if you feel strongly as a board regarding one way or the other, whether they should or whether they should not, I'd like to be able to take that in so we can create a policy around GID members serving on CABs or CAB members being elected onto a GID. So with that, I believe that's the last of the information I'd like to provide you relating to CABs. I'm here for any questions.
Okay, thank you. We have some questions from the commissioners, so we'll start with Vice Chair Jung.
Thank you. The only question, great job, Dave. You're an architect and an engineer, so this must be so much fun to work on.
Great, I love planning.
When it comes to the GID question, if there is no legal reason why they can't be on both, I think it should be totally up to the commissioner who appoints the CAB if they want a GID member or not. I don't think that should disqualify them immediately because they're out serving their citizens. But I don't think it overly qualifies them either, right? I think it's something that each commissioner gets to choose whom they would like to appoint to the Citizens Advisory Board. So I don't have a problem with that at all.
I think where this came up in context is where we had a CAB member on the CAB and then they got elected to the GID board, and the question was whether they should still serve on the GID and the CAB, not kind of the other way around.
But either way, to me, I'm fine with it. I think it's completely up to the commissioner, and if they want to remove them when they get on a GID or other elected office, they can duly remove them with no harm or no foul. But I like having my own choice. I don't even have a CAB, but I do like having the choice were it to be somebody that I appoint, that I'm not constrained as long as it's not illegal when I'm appointing them. So that's just my 2 cents. That's all I have to give you for feedback on this. Thank you.
Thank you, Vice Chair Jung. Commissioner Hartog.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I feel the same way as Commissioner Jung. I have no opinion on that. And in fact, I don't believe that even if a CAB member is running for a particular political office, that's reason to take them off the CAB. I seriously don't see that as a conflict. We do it. We serve and we run at the same time, and so it's one of those things. I know it gets a little itchy, but I think that it's just in fairness that they should be able to do that. As all of you know, I spent a great deal of time on the CAB. I'm glad to see this go back to the Community Services Department, to planning. It's where it belongs. The interesting thing is that if we don't give some time, though, and I'm not saying that we do it each month, but there should be an opportunity, and maybe it's during public comment, I don't know, but the problem is they would not be able to answer questions. I'll use this example. Let's say that there's a rash of car burglaries in Spanish Springs, and the sheriff needs to come out and make the public aware of that, and then they want to ask questions to the sheriff. So while I recognize it's not a forum, there may be a need to necessitate having them there. I like the idea of regularly on a quarterly basis, saying, okay, we'll have fire out, because they do want to talk about things like defensible space and the burn box and things that they're doing in the community, and even, the sheriff. So I recognize where we run into some problems, but it is a good opportunity. My last CAB meeting was very well attended. We had a good group of people come out, and I did not have police. I did not have fire, by the way. They did not come. They did not send a person, but it would be nice to maybe just leave a placeholder there in the event that there's something that they need to address, and leave that up to the fire service and leave it up to the sheriff's office to say, hey, look, we need to come out and talk about this because too many people are leaving their cars unlocked, and we're seeing a rash or just certain kinds of behavior that one of those agencies wants to make us aware of. So I think that there's an opportunity there. That said, the other issue that I see is, and this costs the county a great deal, but we used to have a wonderfully robust training program. I mean, it was so cool because they would run you through all sorts of mock scenarios, and the fellow that led that, and Mr. Manager knows this because he was involved in this. He was over Leslie Roylance, who has long since retired, but the guy who ran all of those training programs and who was very efficient, very effective, and knew the system inside and out is Bob Webb. Mr. Webb was and is a very, very good trainer and knows the system very, very well to, just to prepare the cab. I've noticed at my cab that they don't even understand the basics of running a meeting. We've had a small discussion, and we did that initially, but we've had a lot of members change, and they don't know how to make motions and go through the process of what they can and cannot do and how they can interact with one another. And I think we're still, by law, we have to give them some training on open meeting. Do we not, Mr. Solero?
We do, and that's part of this process, is to kind of really ground the training on what is, what we see is lacking,
right,
and really focus back in on that.
Well, I think meeting protocol is a huge one, and also how to handle a scenario when you have a citizen or a group of citizens that are upset, and what we see at the cabs, when you have a few people who are upset, they have a tendency not to take action, and I don't blame them for that, but I think with good meeting training to learn meeting management, I think that they can come to some kind of a solution, even when they're faced with some really tough decisions to make. And by the way, the cab used to be the gold standard for developers, and they had to be there twice. They would go out the first time, they would present their project and take copious notes and listen to all the feedback, try to adjust to their project, not necessarily giving up complete ground and saying, well, we're not going to do this. They tried to adjust it to comply with some of the desires of the community, and then they would take that adjusted application back to the cab the next month. And if they could get the cab's blessing, it really greased the skids throughout the entire process. The Planning Commission or the BOA or obviously the County Commission, it made it much easier. Are we going to talk about at some point also BOA and Planning Commission, Mr. Solero, because they are inexorably tied to the cabs as well?
So that's a topic, as kind of we nail this down, kind of how this flows. So, for a development project, these types of things, how they enter into our system and where they head. This is really the first piece that really needs to be tackled, so we can really get this dialed in, because then it's how we move that information then onto the Planning Commission and Board of Adjustment.
Right. And I think it's important for the cab members to know where it goes from there.
Correct. Part of the education that is currently missing, not only for the cab members, but for the community at large.
Yes.
We're seeing that in the comments that we're getting, that the community at large really doesn't understand our process and why our process is set up the way it is and how they can enter into the process to be effective.
And the process of appeal and et cetera. Because right now, if it's turned down at the cab, there is no appeal process. It just moves on.
Correct. It moves on to the Planning Commission or Board of Adjustment. Yeah, because the Citizen Advisory Board is an advisory board to those other boards and commissions.
But again, I go back to the days of old where, they had two stabs at it, and the whole goal of that, and this is, and of course, we were in a one-map system versus a two-map system at that time. The whole goal of that was to give the applicant an opportunity. Right. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Commissioner Hartung. Commissioner Herman.
I'm going to be kind of long. So do you want to wait until after the public speaks?
If-
Or do you want me to go ahead?
Let's
Okay,
go ahead.
So I wanted to say a thank you to Mr. Liparelli, because I remember some of the great presentations he would make at the cabs, in the training. They were awesome, right on. All right, so the cabs are, of course, changing to a little different method of operation. Some people have come up with a little slogan. They call it an LLC, which means limiting local citizens. But that's just, what happens. But anyhow, now I'll get down to the nitty-gritty here. There's some problems with the meetings being all spread out and not having meetings and all that. So I've got a few ideas I'd like to run by everyone. Then some information, just to get the information out. We got a timeliness of projects. And so some of the places that have only 3 meetings or 4 meetings a year are going to miss, the timing is always off, and we never get those projects. So I've got a couple of solutions for that. And only temporary or trial or whatever, but just some ideas. So my district is big, and it's spread all over the place. In fact, the North Valley's cab represents Golden Valley, Lemon Valley, Panther Valley, Cold Springs, Red Rock, Antelope Valley, Rancho Haven, and something I can't read here. But anyhow, so being that board has that many locations they're representing, maybe they ought to be given 12 meetings a year, because a lot of the projects, they're happening there.
If I may really quickly, for the
Okay.
Commissioner through the chair, that is one of the enhancements that we're providing for this, is that the North Valley CAB would be a monthly meeting.
Good.
So,
Well, see, all right, I missed that memo. Okay, then I have another idea. I know Sun Valley's kind of its own animal, but and we're already 2 districts within one. So someday maybe they'll hopefully get some more meetings. Gerlach's kind of on its own. Verdi and West Meadows have meetings, and they're combined. So I was thinking maybe they should have like 6 meetings. These are just ideas. And so then the other one that's left over, or 2, Warm Springs and Spanish Springs could actually meet together and have 12 meetings. That way we wouldn't miss those development projects. Well, we're all in they're the closest of any of what I got. So, because as it is, we do have development things going on in Warm Springs, but we never get to hear them because the timing's all off. So if we were having more meetings, we would have the ability to catch all those projects. We have quite a bit of developing going on in the SPA, so we'd like to know what's going on. Anyhow, those are just some suggestions. All right.
Thank you, Commissioner Herman. I think some valuable thoughts and comments there. Mr. Solero, you and I had a conversation regarding this whole issue, and my concern was that we broaden this a little bit from just a planning project, from the perspective of, and I'll just use Verdi as an example because I think it's a good one. The south or west valleys doesn't have a whole lot going on. We don't have a whole lot of development going on, but we do have a river who runs through us. And Verdi has a river who runs through it. And as we deal with flood control issues, those are issues that are going to be very important to that group of people. So they may not be necessarily about a development project that's going on right now, but they certainly will have an impact on future development projects. And so I would like to see that we expand that term development project enough to allow that to be agendized. So, you know, when we start talking about flood control, we might want to talk to every cab about that. We might want to have a presentation made to every cab, but certainly to those cabs that are sitting directly on the river and that flood control is going to impact. I think we need to broaden the definition, and I think you and I agreed that that would actually happen.
Yeah, if I may, I think, you know, part of the distinction is really, you know, whether we're trying to gather input from our community that we as Washoe County can affect, you know, in the decision-making process. And so I've certainly got that noted here on the types of things that we would like to, you know, have at CAB meetings. You know, I think there's always going to be that one-off, that weird thing that, you know, it's like, oh, what do we do with that? You know, CAB meeting might be the location for that.
Exactly right.
You know,
the other one, of course, is the fire situation in Verdi, which we talked about, which is something where we could agendize it for the CAB. I think the people in the West Valleys who sit on that and who come to that CAB meeting would be very interested to hear what the plans are as it relates to how we're going to assure, you know, the protections that the chief talked about at the last meeting. So I think those are the kinds of things that I would like to see, and not just a specific project. And then I think what happens with that is that allows us to continue to have a meeting, because maybe we don't have a specific development project for the West Valley and the Verdi, but we could bring the chief in to talk about what is the summer plan for fire protection in Verdi. What is the plan that he's putting together to assure that there's fire protection, or as flood issues? I mean, there's probably 100 issues that we might that might impact development at some point in time. And of course, they're not all sitting out there today, so we're not prepared to do all of that. But I just want to make sure that we give the citizens who sit on those boards the opportunity to hear, and the citizens who come to those meetings the opportunity to hear these various different things that are going on out there in the various areas. And so that was my point in asking that we expand that definition of development projects to include things that could have a direct bearing on development projects like fire control and flood control. So, I mean, I think that's really my comment, and I just wanted to get that on record. And I felt comfortable, as I said, Mr. Solero and I had a discussion on it. We both agreed that that was probably one of the things that the CAB needed to be sort of, you know, more flexible. And so I think I'm fine with that, but I wanted to get it on record. And the second thing is, I really don't have an issue as far as whether there is a person who sits on a GID and a CAB both. I don't have an issue with that. The only issue is, I remember some years ago, I believe it was when we had the previous commission when just Commissioner Jung, Vice Chair Jung, Commissioner Hartung and myself were on it with the two other commissioners, and there was one CAB where we had the person who was chairman of the CAB who was running for the commission, and I think if the person is grandstanding to run for a GID position, I'd have a problem with that, but otherwise I don't see it to be an issue. And I just want to make sure that we give everybody equal footing and equal time. So that would be my only comment on that. Otherwise, I really personally don't care one way or the other. That's all I have. Vice Chairman Jung.
Thank you very much. I think what you, Madam Chairwoman, what you were discussing is not a CAB at all. That's not a citizen advisory board. That's not what the NRS was set up for. It's not the way that we've been directing staff to go. I think you're talking about community fairs, community forums, and those can easily be put together in reaction to emerging community items. The one thing I don't want to do here, as a Washoe County that collects money from our fair taxpayers, to be doing other people's jobs. The sheriff can have his own community forum, and if they call him out there, I think he would want to go, since that's an elected department head. Fire, again, RTC, if the people need RTC or the airport or NDOT or waste management, I don't mind being a facilitator, but if that's all that it's about, flood needs to be there with their staff meeting with those citizens, not all of our staff explaining flood to them. So if you want a community forum, I completely support that. But a CAB to have a CAB to have a CAB to hold a space is not efficient use of our resources. It's not even really the way that citizens are asking to be communicated to anymore. And if you need to have a town hall, you have every right to call a town hall or any issue. But to say, I want a holding space here so that our staff can facilitate somebody else's job is, I think, a colossal waste of our money and time and talent. Every single one of these agencies have community outreach people that we are paying, all of us, through our taxes as well. So I know we are the regional government, and I'm proud of that, but we all are not the regional herders of cats when somebody asks
yes,
for
we
something. Well, I don't want to be, because we don't have the bandwidth. We have nothing. We're completely flat, our budget. So I don't think we should be looking for a solution in which there is not a problem. And if there is an emerging problem, which we have 311 that can identify immediately if there's a big issue in the area, boom, call the meeting. It doesn't need to be an open meeting law issue. That way, lots of things can be generated and talked about. That's what staff's trying to say to us. They're trying to take those shackles off of us so that we can adroitly and adeptly and quickly move on any issue as it comes up. But our liaisons are not NDOT's liaisons. They are not RTC's liaisons. They are our liaisons for county issues. So that would be my feedback, and I would be very much against that, what was suggested, because just holding them to do other people's work, I think, is a shame to the taxpayers of Washoe County. Thank you.
Thank you, Vice Chairman Jung. And just in response, I would say, I think perhaps you're misunderstanding what I'm saying. It's not my intent to suggest that we go back to the old style cab where, you know, we had a litany of people come in and just make presentations just for purpose of making presentation. But I do think that there are issues that directly impact our bottom line. Fire clearly in Verdi is one of those issues. Flood control at both Vaughn's end of the river and my end of the river and Bob's. Well, downtown and yours also. I think flood control is an issue only from the perspective of when they go to the ballot, they go to propose whatever they're going to propose. We want to make sure that our citizens have the opportunity to know about it and speak on it, and that was really what I was referring to. I would also remind the Vice Chairman that we are the board for the fire district. So you're right on where the sheriff is concerned, but we are the board for the fire district. So I think that's important. Regardless, that I think you make some valid points, and I do agree that our goal here is not to have a meeting where people can come in and complain about whatever they want to complain about and not have anything done. But at the same time, we want to be able to hear what our citizens have to say. So I think that's really the point that I was making, and that I hope is clear and not confusing. Commissioner Lucy.
Thank you, Madam Chair. My comments will stay consistent as they've always stayed. You know, the first comment is that open meeting law. You know, since the addition to open meeting law to all of our public meetings, and since the CABs fall under the jurisdiction of an open meeting law, we are precluded from having discussions, just the same as we are here.
Yes.
The board can have discussion with themselves, but we cannot integrate a discussion type format into a CAB to discuss those types of discussions. Whereas community forums are not subject to those, and I have in the last 3 years, through my ability as a commissioner to hold district forums, have been immensely beneficial to my constituents in regards to having a dialogue with them and being able to get on the board and have those kind of conversations. The community forums have been invaluable to my citizens in those discussions. 311 is immediately connected to our management services, which can put together, and Mr. Solero, how just for reference, how quickly could you put together a community forum if a commissioner instigated one, or staff had or 311 came with the situation? How soon from the very time that situation was initiated to a community forum? What would that timeline look like?
For the commissioner through the chair, the biggest constraint there is the meeting place. getting on the calendar of a meeting place, but we've got a lot of those out there. I think the last one we put together, we did within a week's time. We can certainly do it quicker if the topic needed to be, but notification of the public is the other piece. They're trying to get the information out to the public on where we're going to meeting when we can. We could do it certainly within, probably 3 to 5 business days without an issue.
Okay. I mean, I've covered thank you, Mr. Solero. I've covered marijuana, I've covered fire, I've covered flooding, I've covered a number of different issues directly with my constituents through community forums. I've had sheriffs, I've had the assessor's office, I've community service, I've had a number of different people that have been able to come and interact with the public in a different format, and I think a more beneficial format that still everybody feels challenged with, because they feel like just because it's not a CAB, because it's not agendized, because they don't feel that their voice is heard. But I would absolutely negate that by saying if a commissioner is there and you have staff time there, then you're no differently talking to the county than you would during a CAB, and it has been tremendously beneficial. I think I've been able to get more stuff done for my constituent base through district forums than I've ever had through a CAB. And I think CABs can be onerous and tied down and very challenging. They are very, South Valley's CAB is very rarely, prior to the change, didn't get done within 6 hours. 6-hour meetings for a CAB and our commission doesn't even hear that long, and it was challenged at best. And now, because of the change the last 3 years, we've been able to move through meetings in a reasonable amount of time, 2 hours, to address development projects, a number of different projects in the South Valleys, and then with the addition of district forums, have more, entrenched conversations about challenges within the area. So that is my opinion. It has not changed. I think the way we have it right now is great. And Commissioner Jung is exactly right. RTC has a number of outside forums that they do continuously. They have roundtables. They do charrettes. NDOT does charrettes, and they hold them. So we should not be that conduit. Absolutely not. We should be the people that suggest those charrettes and participate in those, but not be the mediator for those at all. And that's just a waste of taxpayer dollars. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Commissioner Lucy. Commissioner Hartung.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I agree with Commissioner Lucy with respect to the agencies. TUMWA does the same thing. We have community forums fairly regularly and consistently. The only thing I might add, though, with respect to having, I'll couch it to police and fire, would be to label it as possible emergency item. And not that they're not there all the time, just, if there is the need for them to talk to the community for an emergency item, it's a placeholder on the agenda to say, okay, they're going to be out here. A perfect example might have been some of the fires that we've had, Little Valley Fire, where the fire department not only held those community meetings, but responded to people at the CAB meeting as well, or to talk to them about responses. That would be the sort of 2 caveats that I might see for emergency services. But I agree. When you have CAB meetings that last 6 hours, there's very little forward motion, and people leave a little frustrated. CAB members leave frustrated, and I don't think that that's a good environment. So I would agree. And again, I think if we get back to the roots of saying, okay, look, this is really, we refer to them, and I have no problem with referring to them again as citizen planners. That's what they were citizen planners. Okay. And though I will say periodically we used to see the Flood Management Authority would come out and talk to us about where they were with respect to their project, and I cannot dispute that it was a good place for us to get certain safety features put on the Pyramid Highway, and NDOT was responsive to that. Mike Feast used to come out on a regular basis to try to solve some of the problems that we were having in terms of safety, and so the CAB was a good place. But I think as we move forward, we as commissioners need to be more responsive and put those things together to talk about, you know, safety features throughout the community and distance ourselves in terms of the CAB meeting itself from planning versus what other things go on in the community.
Okay.
And that is our responsibility. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Hartung. We will, at this time, go to public comment. And I have listed Ms. Tammy Holtstill and then Mr. Ray Lake.
Tammy Holtstill, Lemon Valley Swan Lake Recovery Committee. I do have a correction that I need to read to you as soon as I can get it to come up. Okay, back, where were you? It says here, the Board of the County Commissioners of any county may establish an ordinance advisory boards for any purpose relating to the county in which the board desires study and advice, which means that you want advice from the citizens. By cutting down the advisory boards, you're cutting down the advice of what your citizens who voted you into office want to tell you what they need and see. I think that changing things around, things are not going to get addressed, like the emergency that we had, that residents had to take time off work besides going away from their homes when there was an emergency to come here to talk to you because you weren't listening. Then you have the fact that, what else did I have on here? Oh, the North Valleys was okay. Okay, advisory boards are not a record, a point of record, and cannot be held accountable. So, with that being said, no matter how many of those advisory boards you did, you didn't have to do anything that the residents suggested to you or address it, really. You could just say, yeah, and walk away from it. CABs are there for a reason, to put things on the record like I'm doing right now. And that is why they are out there, is for the citizens who work, can speak in the evenings when they cannot be here. And you're taking that away from them with the way that you're trying to do things. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Ray Lake. And next is Mr. Garth Elliott.
Good morning, Madam Chair, Commissioners. My name is Ray Lake. I am the chairman of the North Valley Citizens Advisory Board, and I do have some comments on the proposals from Mr. Solero. I see that they put in a great deal of work, and I got some of what I would like to see, but not everything. And I'd like to address specifically the State Airport, RTC, and NDOT. Those are all things that affect development in the North Valleys, whether it's a specific development that we hear. These are things that we need advice on. We need to know what NDOT is doing, and the comments that are made at those meetings are on the record, and they do come back to this body. So that would affect future planning. And right now, the position I have as a member of the North Valleys CAB is that it's irresponsible to approve any more developments or put any more cars on the road until 395 is enhanced to support the traffic. Right now, it's not safe. It's our path to emergency medical care, and the traffic backs up several times a day. If there's a wreck, even as far south as Villanova, traffic will back up clear to Stead Boulevard. And that and the airport is a big elephant in the room out there. Even though it's the city of Reno, it still affects our development and what's going on there. The sheriff, right now the city of Reno has a Ward 4 Neighborhood Advisory Board. They have RPD there on a quarterly basis. And I know that the Sheriff's Department has been very proactive in coming out to meet with us. We like to see them. They actually come to our property owners meetings where there may only be 8 or 10 people and talk to us. And we like to see them. And I really would like the things I see. I like the monthly meetings. But again, if they get canceled very often, that reduces consistency. And I would like to see it expanded a little bit to cover some of the things that are not offered now. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lake. Mr. Garth Elliott.
Me?
Yeah, you're on the list.
Years ago or something, huh? Good afternoon, Commissioners. For the record, Garth Elliott. I want to say meow. First of all, no, trying to get me to do anything is definitely like herding cats. I came here today with a negative attitude towards community forums. But looking back at the ones we've had, I like them now. I think it's a good idea, Kitty. And you've done several in Sun Valley. And this is in relation to the fact that we're limited to quarterly CAB meetings, but a lot of those CAB meetings we're having could be dealt with on community forums, and they have been the last couple of years. And I like that. We have a building, it's ours, the GID has a building. We have the new reader board, which is a good way to get it out. And we can have them pretty quickly, and they have been good. Sometimes 100 people show up. So yay on community forums. As far as delegating them to the police and fire and taking them out of the realm of the cabs, that could work because we're only limited to 4. Somewhere back in the distant past, county has linked development and land use issues to the cabs. I don't know when or where that happened, but it never was the case. It was an opportunity to get things back to your commissioner. You know, we're 6-8 miles from here. A lot of older people, it's tough to get in to see you guys. Only a few of us have the time and the wherewithal to do it. That's where it happened, but of course that turned into bitching sessions, as we all know. Big bitching sessions, but there's a lot to be said about bitching. It's never worked with me and my wife, but you know, I can only hope. I can only hope. But the cabs for us were opportunities to get stuff to you, commissioners, outside of a forum that the cabs use. Just talk to you, not really on a one-on-one because of the problem about interchange of ideas is limited. But it's opportunities to get with fire and police, and the citizens are very interested when we had the fire and the police show up to get statistics, to get ideas and what's happening with, we have an increase in fires or theft, which is almost always the case, or graffiti issues. So it was invaluable for that. So I'm glad we have 4. I'd like to get them all back. One can only hope. That's enough for now. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Elliott. We have no more public comments, so we'll bring it back to the board. Vice Chairman Jung.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. I would like to let Mr. Elliott know that I believe what staff was proposing is that those 4 will be held should there be development, but because North Valleys has been identified in our regional plan, which by the way we're updating this year, as the area of growth, I think you will have monthly meetings. You will have monthly cabs because of the development that is going to go in there that the developer needs to come and talk to you, whether they're affecting you upstream or downstream. And so I wouldn't look at that, you know, hard and fast. And who knows if the regional plan then changes next year. Let's say we decide to do all development east. Well, then the East Truckee Canyon would need to be having, you know, monthly meetings about that development. But I think to see that this is hard and fast is the exact opposite of what staff is proposing. And this is actually going to make us much more nimble, and your cab is not taken away if you have development that is going to affect that area. And sadly, North Valleys and Sun Valley, because of that ancient regional plan, it was determined that South Washoe County was too precious to have intense development, and that would all go north of the river. So, and that can always change, but I'm saying to you right now, I think that without that regional plan changing, you will have more cabs than you need to get your arms around with the influx of heavy development that developers are in every day trying to propose creating a subdivision in that area. So I just want to make sure that got on the record. Thanks, Madam Chairwoman.
Thank you, Vice Chairman Jung. Commissioner Hartung.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I have a completely different recollection, and my recollection goes back into the very early 90s. I served as an appointed person from the Spanish Springs Citizens Advisory Board on the Spanish Springs Elementary School Design Review Committee. It was all about development. It was all about planning. And I still have my original cab handbook that's somewhat of an ancient thing, but I have kept it. That's what we did in Spanish Springs. We saw developmental applications and how it was going to what our vision of the valley was, not necessarily to, and in fact I say this pretty emphatically, not to stop growth, but to guide growth in a managed way where we could all live with what we knew to be coming. So I stand steadfast that I think the cab is a great place for planning to start, and it allows people to give feedback in a forum where you have planners and you have the applicant, so that you can ask them some tough questions. And by the way, it's not held by the applicant, because one of the complaints has been in the past when an applicant holds a forum and things start to get perhaps a little difficult for them, they close the forum down. That does not happen at CABS. So I stand steadfast, and I would implore this board to stay the direction, let community development take it over. Let's start with some good training, get back to that model, and go back to citizen planner. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Mr. Liparelli.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just three quick legal points. First, the state law does authorize the county to have citizen advisory boards, and it doesn't impose restrictions on what they can discuss. But using your authority to create them, you can decide as a matter of policy and the spending of county resources how many to have, what their function will be, how often they'll meet, and those kinds of issues. So it's a broad grant of authority, but you have the ability to define the way they work in Washoe County. Second point, certain kinds of development approvals require neighborhood meetings. It's in the state law. Master plans, for example, the process has to include a meeting in the neighborhood where the proposed change is to take place. So CABs serve that purpose. It is an allowable and appropriate use of an existing structure, a citizen advisory board, to satisfy that obligation to have neighborhood meetings on certain development approvals. Those things go together. There are no legal problems with that. Third point, when you undertake to do something, you have to do it appropriately. CABs are created by the Board of County Commissioners. They are therefore public bodies, and they must follow all the state laws on open meeting law, public records, ethics, to name a few. So once you create this being, it has to be properly treated and cared for, which does involve training, which as Commissioner Herman mentioned earlier, my office is glad to do. It's preventative law. We can make sure problems don't happen if we do good training, and we're available to do that. But we're not set up to be able to staff CAB meetings during their meetings. So there is risk that during meetings, violations of the open meeting law can take place. The danger for that is not necessarily the voiding of the action of the advisory board, because it's it's a piece of advice, which if it's declared void, doesn't cause a giant legal consequence unless it's one of those development approvals that's statutorily required. But people who violate the open meeting law can be independently prosecuted or fined by the Attorney General for knowing violations of the open meeting law. So the more of them you have, the more meetings you have, the more frequently issues come up, the broader the scope of their mission, the more exposure there is to risk of not following the law.
Thank you, Mr. Liparelli. Commissioner Herman.
A lot of the folks in the North Valleys, in order to find out what's going on in between CAB meetings, have been going to the NABs, just so they could get some information on what's actually happening. And then recently, there's been a few CAB and NAB meetings that are very good. They're very good turnout and just real effective. And so I wonder if, since those meetings, I don't know how they're structured and how, if the county helps to pay some of the costs of those, it would be interesting to find out. And you know, the more information people have, the better off they are. And the more that people have input to the county, I mean, it seems like it saves the county a lot of work if they know what the people are thinking. You can save a lot of long commission meetings if people have a chance to let their thoughts come out in the CAB meetings. So there's a lot of different things there. But I would like to find out, you know, if we're contributing to those meetings as a county, because they're very, very useful and helpful to everybody. All right. And one other thing was probably, in order to get even better turnouts at like the North Valley's CAB, for instance, the meeting place where the NAB and the CAB met together for the last one is more centrally located in the North Valley's district. And so it might be a better place to hold the CAB meetings. And I know that the people that run that out there, I can't remember the gentleman's name, but he said he would very much welcome them. So it's a thought. So thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Herman. Vice Chair Jung.
Yeah, thank you very much, Madam Chairwoman. I want to piggyback on that because I think that in this time of growth and the impacts that it is going to be having on people, whether they are in the sphere of influence or in the city of Reno or Sparks or in the unincorporated county, I would encourage citizen planners to apply to the neighborhood advisory boards as well, and maybe, you know, nicely ask that council person, while they don't really represent you, they do represent you, that maybe every one of these NABs that are experiencing the most developmental issues, maybe we could ask the cities of Reno and Sparks if one unincorporated county person could be on said NAB or be, you know, yeah, have a voting membership on that. I don't know why they would care if there's 7 people. And just nicely ask if they would like to, next time that there's an opening, appoint somebody like that. So they also can bring in, it's much like what you said about Ranchera. The impacts and the traffic and all of those other things really affect your constituents, but because it was a City of Reno project, it wasn't fully vetted as a regional issue. So I would really, you know, encourage and help in any way I can to have that dual relationship, and just one would be enough. That could be the person, you know, the speaking voice for those people impacted that aren't necessarily within city limits. I think that could help a lot.
That's a good
Thank
point.
you, Madam Chairwoman.
Thank you, Vice Chairman Jung. Commissioner Hartung?
Yeah, to dovetail off of Commissioner Jung, Commissioner Herman, Sparks had a CAC, Citizens Advisory Council, and it was a very different, it actually, by attending meetings, you became a member. It wasn't appointed, it wasn't the same structure. It was a very different structure than what I was familiar with at the time, and I had many years ago attended several of them. To my knowledge, and maybe Mr. Solero can speak to this, I don't know, maybe he doesn't know. To my knowledge, the citizens of Sparks don't have a CAC any longer. And we have appointed citizens who live in Sparks to the Citizens Advisory Board. I have some that I've appointed for the simple reason that they interact with our community all the time. They shop out in Spanish Springs in the unincorporated. They drive the roads. They potentially, if they call 911, could have Station 17 responding to them. So they, and even, sheriff's deputies. So that was part of the impetus that caused me to want to appoint some of those folks. But that said, while the city of Reno has a robust program, the city of Sparks has nothing. So I don't know how we would work backwards with them. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Commissioner Herman. And with that, we have no more comments. I did it again. Commissioner Hartung, I am sorry. Please forgive me, Commissioner Hartung. I don't know what's wrong. Maybe I lost my mind along with my voice. Anyway, with that, we have no more comments. So we bring this back to the board. I am looking for a motion. Commissioner Lucy?
Madam Chair, I would submit at this time to accept and move to acknowledge the update from staff and provide the possible direction of the Citizens Advisory Boards that we stay on the course as we have previously, that the new action that we would allow GID members to potentially sit on cabs in conjunction with their appointments to GIDs, continue the increased training opportunities for cabs and cab meetings, and also improve the notification processes and facilitate planning staff attendance for relevant cab portions.
Second. I have a motion and a second. Any additional comments? All those in favor signify by saying aye, and please cast your vote.
Aye.
Please check your vote. Anybody opposed? Please cast your vote. Motion carries 5-0. And so we will close this item and move on. And so we are going to take a break now, if that is acceptable to the to the manager. And so we're going to take a break. We will not be back before 1:30. We have 2 items that we have to do, so we will say 1:45 is when we will be back. Okay? Thank you. We are in recess. Order. And I turned on my microphone, which is always a good thing. So, Mr. Manager, I believe we're on to 13.
We are on item 13. This is a recommendation to adopt a resolution declaring the tracts of land owned by Washoe County within the proposed Business Improvement District in the downtown area of the city of Reno are especially benefited by the Downtown Reno Business Improvement District pursuant to NRS 271.0402 and other matters properly relating thereto. Madam Chair, board may recall, the board has received, I believe, 2 presentations on this topic. The last action the board took was to authorize the chair to sign the petition for our participation. This is the resolution, and I believe Mr. Liparelli can provide some additional information related to the need for the resolution today.
Okay. Mr. Liparelli, do you want to add something, or you want to?
Just briefly, Madam Chair, to set the stage, when these special assessment districts are created, local governments that own property that are subject to assessment are automatically out of the district unless they affirmatively opt in to the district. So the resolution you have in front of you is a device by which Washoe County can subject itself to assessments which would ordinarily by law not apply to the county. The recitals in the resolution describe the potential benefits, and if there are any questions, please ask.
Commissioners, any questions for either the manager or staff or Mr. Liparelli? Commissioner Hartung.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Commissioner Lucy had asked about potentially, and I agreed with it, that the city of Reno might be able to participate, and we were concerned with the nonprofits in the core and how they would be able to pay their fair share. We were, of course, a member of the BID reached out and said that they would not let them flounder by any stretch, but I'm wondering if we had heard back from the city of Reno with respect to our request in terms of participation.
Thank you, Commissioner Hartung. I don't know the answer to that. Mr. Manager, do you know if we've heard back?
Madam Chair, if I could.
Commissioner Lucy?
Maybe I could shed some light on that. There has been some brief discussions with members of the BID. There hasn't been any formal action brought to the city of Reno in regards to compensating or meeting us halfway in regards to that that number. However, it is believed that at this time that may not be something they would want to entertain because of the proportion they've already invested. But however, I can't speak for their board, nor have they taken that under consideration at this time. So it's still a discussion, and really one thing I want to point out to this board is that this is a resolution for Washoe County to participate, but the BID as a whole is still in that process of complete formation, as Deputy DA pointed out, Liparelli pointed out, that the formation still needs to come to its finality by, obviously we're going to be, since our meeting's on Tuesday, we'll hold our resolution day, but tomorrow City of Reno will take up a resolution to participate as well. And then there will be, a series of meetings that the City of Reno would have to partake in to allow for said BID to participate. So that's kind of where we're at. So we're in the midst of that true formation that has to go through a myriad of public process still.
Thank you, Commissioner Lucy, and thank you also for taking the lead on this project, which is, I think, fairly important to downtown redevelopment. Mr. Liparelli.
Just quickly on two matters. As Commissioner Lucy explained, there are legal steps yet to be taken by the city. However, the city did already adopt a resolution that opted itself in. I know they have some matters coming up on their agenda tomorrow that involve the BID, but they've already gone first and said, yes, we'll tax ourselves to be part of this. So this is Washoe County's opportunity to do that. Secondly, on the subsidy of nonprofits and all, we wouldn't be advising as a legal matter that the county or the city pay the assessment of any particular group or person. However, it's worth pointing out that the county and the city both are active in making grants to nonprofit agencies who do perform services that benefit the public. So it is foreseeable some of these downtown facilities may maybe the beneficiaries of grants that help them with all of their costs, including properties.
And those can,
Madam Chair, one other point I'd like to add as well to this as well is in discussions with the members of the BID, and that board hasn't fully been developed yet. I mean, the membership of that board hasn't, but there has been discussions about measures to ask for donations from other private entities within the area to cover that stopgap as well. So I know the issue has been brought in front of the BID board members, but also there are many other opportunities available for private companies to participate in through a donation process to cover said stopgap measures.
thank you, Commissioner Lucy. And I was going to say, and even if we approve this today, those issues could still come back at a different time asking for grant money from us. Okay, correct. I see no public comment at this time, so I'm looking for a motion. Oh, I'm sorry, I can't see it.
Hi, Madam Chairwoman. Considering that this is all my district, I would like to make the motion that we adopt the resolution declaring the tracts of land owned by Washoe County within the proposed business improvement district in the downtown area of City of Reno are specially benefited by the downtown Reno Business Improvement District. And I would also add, I know the argument's not quite over, but I could also argue that these nonprofits, with us revitalizing and improving the downtown, they will also get much benefit from that as well.
Madam Chair, I will second. Madam Chair, I would second the motion as well. With further discussion that I agree with Commissioner Jung that I think a little stake in the game by even the nonprofits will benefit from said BID improvement. So
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Please cast your vote. Please affirm your vote. Motion carries 5-0. And then we will move on. Mr. Manager.
Our next item is item 14. This is possible action to introduce and conduct a first reading of an ordinance to amend Washoe County Code Chapter 5, Administration and Personnel.
Would you like an introduction?
Who are you pointing at? I'm looking out there. Madam Clerk, would you please read the introduction for us?
Certainly. This will be Bill number 1795, an ordinance amending the Washoe County Code at Chapter 5, Administration and Personnel by repealing the provisions relating to family medical leave at 5.270. We just need an introduction.
Okay. I can't see it, yeah. Okay.
I would like to introduce Bill number 1795 and set a public hearing for the second reading and possible adoption of the ordinance for February 13th, 2018.
Okay. Thank you very much. And now we are moving on to our public hearing. We'll open the public hearing. Mr. Manager.
Madam Chair, this is item 15. This is a public hearing. The second reading and adoption of an ordinance amending Washoe County Code Chapter 55 by separating exotic animals into a 3-tiered classification system.
Oh, Madam Clerk, sorry.
Thank you. If adopted, Madam Chair, this will bear ordinance number 1609, an ordinance amending Washoe County Code Chapter 55 by separating exotic animals into 3-tiered classification system, by exempting Tier 1 exotic animals from the exotic animal permit process, by requiring persons wishing to possess Tier 2 or Tier 3 exotic animals to obtain an exotic animal permit, by amending provisions related to the application for an exotic animal permit, the processing of an exotic animal permit, the requirements and conditions imposed upon an exotic animal permit, the approval or denial of an exotic animal permit, the revocation of an exotic animal permit, and the appeal process, by modifying the minimal structural enclosure requirements for primates, felines, canines, reptiles, bears, hoofed animals, marsupials, and raptors, by amending provisions related to the impoundment of exotic animals, and by adding and revising various definitions. This was previously issued Bill number 1794.
Thank you. I need an introduction.
Nope.
You want to do public comment?
Well,
you want to do comments? Commissioner Hartung. Okay.
So Madam Chairman, Madam Chair, it was pointed out, and I would draw your attention to page 7 under 3, subset A. Coverage is $25,000 for a Tier 2 exotic animal. That's not an entire classification. That indicates to me per animal, and that slipped by my reading. I read it and I did not see that. But when I was directed by a member of the community to go back and look at that, I see my personal take on that is coverage is $25,000 for a Tier 2 exotic animal and $250,000 for a Tier 3 exotic animal. That would indicate to me per animal, not per permit.
Seems excessive. Could we have Ms. Schull come forward? And I would ask that you forgive my voice. I am still recovering from laryngitis, and it's been a long day already. Ms. Schull?
Good afternoon, Commissioner. Cheyenne Schull for the record. So we did have some discussion about this during the first reading, and there was some clarifications that needed to be made after the first meeting, whether or not this was something that was given direction to change, or was it just discussion. This particular verbiage, the way it's worded in code, indicates that it's per animal. However, I think it would be pertinent to clarify that dependent upon the animal, the insurance, you may be able to add 5 python snakes, and the insurance policy would be for 5 python snakes. But if you had a Tier 3 animal and a Tier 2 animal, or two tier animals and a Tier 3 animal, your insurance policies are going to vary based on those animals. But the way it's worded in code, it's per animal. So I think it depends on the animal whether or not that policy is going to increase or stay the same.
I thought, Ms. Schull, and forgive me, Madam Chair, for the interruption, I thought, Ms. Schull, that we talked about per permit as opposed to per animal. I thought that was the direction that the board gave.
We did talk about that, yes.
Yeah. I can't support that. I'm sorry. Thank you, Madam Chair.
So let's do public hearing, do public comments. So we will open public comments at this time, and we would ask Mr. Bill Majora, and please forgive me if I pronounce this wrong. You certainly can correct me.
Bill Majora.
Yes, and Mr. Tim Stoffel is next.
I live in Virginia foothills, almost. On 9 January, it seemed like Animal Services did not realize that snakes and humans have different requirements for health and comfort.
Could you pull the mic a little bit closer, please? Thank you.
It seemed like on 9 January that Animal Services did not realize that snakes and humans have different requirements for health and comfort. They didn't realize that we tolerate the risk of dog bites without requiring dog insurance before a dog has proven dangerous, and that NDOW has responsibility for endangered species. If you want to get this right, one of you will ask Animal Services for evidence of risk to support their tier assignments. Animal welfare and state law are not relevant to the Tier 2 and Tier 3 insurance requirements. The liability insurance has to be related to public safety. And public safety cannot be a valid excuse for Tier 3 and Tier 3 insurance without some verification of a greater threat than a dog, which does not require insurance or home inspections. In this country, dog bites annually cause over 20 deaths, 885,000 victims to seek medical attention, and over $530 million in claims paid by homeowner insurance. Are you going to ask Animal Services to provide some sort of support for their tier assignments? Can they find any cases of prairie dog, capybara, or possum attacks causing death, a need for medical attention, or a homeowner insurance claim, or any kind of insurance claim? How about changing the approach to liability insurance for exotic animals? I suggest that if the insurance requirement is retained, that it be a cap with the amount to be decided by on a per animal or animal species basis, and the insurance set for any animal be subject to appeal. Please, Animal Services cannot get this right without animal keepers, and Animal Services has a history of not listening to them.
Thank you.
And Madam Chair, for the record, Mr. Majoria gave us a handout which I distributed to the board.
Thank you, Mr. Stoffel. And next will be Mr. Garth Elliott, who I don't see in the room. So next will be Ms. Jill Dobbs.
Tim Stoffel, 10515 Trail Drive, Reno, Nevada. We've come again before you to discuss the merits and problems of this bill. Bill did a very good job of summing up some of the insurance problems. I would point out that the insurance you're requiring for coati, which is a small animal that 2 or 3 of could fit on top of this dais here that have no history of attacking people, you could feed that animal for 3 years for the cost of the insurance for that animal. It comes out to the typical $1,000 it is for that kind of tier 3 insurance. And I don't think tier 2 insurance is probably that much less expensive, because the base cost of insurance like that is very high because you have to go to a specialist. Well, insurance matters aside, the last time we were here, this commission remarked that they did not want to be like Clark County. As you probably know, Clark County has passed a strangulating animal ordinance down there that has caused a great deal of trouble down there for animal owners, has caused a lot of people to leave the county and caused a lot of people to move their animals out of the county. And I know that firsthand because I have a friend of mine in Nye County who's been taking animals left and right from people in Clark County. And there's probably a lot of people in Clark County that are just plain hiding their animals because they don't want to deal with the onerous rules they passed down. And their rules even apply to, they've got cat and dog problems besides exotics. So this doesn't, they passed, although we've kind of gotten by this, their law is so strict that the Lion Habitat Ranch, one of the 2 things down there they had that could pass for a zoo, they can't breed or replace any of their animals now. So when their animals die, they're out of business. And I know we've got the exhibitor's permit coming next. We don't want to have to deal with anything like that. And they did manage to get the Moapa Zoo to close. So the thing is, they said that they were going to come back and revisit this permit in 6 months when they did that. And I know there's, they talk about, well, let's get this passed so we can revisit it in 6 months. Well, guess what? They've never revisited that permit. And the animal owners down there are still suffering. I know the last time I was at the Lion Habitat Ranch, they were despondent because there is a thing they can do and they're just watching their lions die of old age. So the thing is, if we want to make this, if we don't want to be like Clark County, we need to make this ordinance right the first time and not, go around and say, well, let's just get this passed and fix it later. Animals are a precious resource in our society, and we can't just simply legislate them out of existence or legislate people underground by bad ordinances. And the other thing is, if we had gotten Animal Services to work with us 2 years ago, we wouldn't be here today. This has all been taken care of, but no, this is being dragged out because they won't talk to us and they won't reason with us. You have the power to make that happen, and I wish you to exercise that power. I guess that's all I have to say for today. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Stoffel. Mr. Sam McCall.
Hello. So with this proposed ordinance, my own biggest problem with it is the requirement of liability insurance for several of the tier 2 species. So as I mentioned the last meeting, I mostly keep several species of exotic rodents. I already have to go through the Nevada Department of Wildlife for those rodents. And not all of the species listed in for NDOW permits are even have the capability to be invasive. And some, like northern flying squirrels, are even found within the state. But I do have to pay permitting fees and have permits for those types of animals. But now, with this proposed ordinance, I would have to pay seems like $24,000 insurance per animal for all my small rodents, like a dagu. A dagu's a non-aggressive rodent. It's small. It's like a little gerbil, but it's not commonly found in stores. Never really will bite you, unlike hamsters and such. And I'd have to pay $24,000 for all of my dagus. I'd have to pay $24,000 for my prairie dogs or my ground squirrels. That's ridiculous. I can't afford that. I'd be paying more for my animals than I would on my house. So I asked the board to consider that this not only has an arbitrary set of tier systems playing off the fear of exotic animals like it's a foreign concept, such as prairie dogs, like they're dangerous, but also the fact that this would put a huge financial strain on owners, and while it's not essentially banning the animals, it's putting such a financial strain that unless if you're a really wealthy person who wants to own a lot of prairie dogs, you're not going to be able to afford this, and I'll have to give up my pets or move out of this, county to keep my pets, or something along those lines, pets that are already regulated by the state and are not harmful to the general public, only to my fingers if I'm feeding them. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. I now have Ms. Jill Dobbs. Oh, I'm sorry, followed by Mr. Phil Goss.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair and Commissioners. My name is Jill Dobbs. I'm the Executive Director of the SPCA of Northern Nevada. I'm also a member of the Washoe County Regional Animal Services Advisory Council. I would like to respectfully remind the County Commission of its mission, working together regionally to provide and sustain a safe, secure, and healthy community. These proposed code amendments reasonably address many of the opposition's concerns, while remaining true to the important objectives of public safety per this county's mission, Washoe County's liability, and animal welfare. I was born and raised in Washoe County, and while there will always be those who want to live in a lawless land, I for one choose public safety for the sake of my son, my family, and entire community, which is over 400,000 strong. And I would also like to say that these animals cannot advocate for their own health and safety. They rely on us for common sense protections. I encourage you to vote yes on today's code amendments. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Dobbs. Mr. Phil Goss, followed by Mr. Bob Pelton. I was about to say that. Give me a chance here.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. I'm Phil Goss, President of the United States Association of Reptile Keepers, or USARC, and I'm not going to disagree with the last speaker. As opposed to 2 weeks ago, you had at least one member come and support this ordinance. And we're not looking at this ordinance as a bad thing. We're not calling this ordinance the devil, but as you've all heard, devil is in the detail. And again, it's an over-onerous ordinance. The people just want to be in compliance, but to bring up liability insurance again, when we did research on this for a state issue just 3 or 4 years ago, the base insurance plan was $500 a year. For every animal you added, it was $100 to the plans. I don't know what kind of background you've been given on this liability insurance. We had some members who actually lost their homeowner's policy insurance because the homeowners didn't understand what animals they had and wouldn't cover them under homeowners insurance, even though it was a totally separate insurance company. And so the pricing, again, is going to be extremely high, and that pricing that I just gave you was for small exotics and non-venomous reptiles. So it's just going to escalate from there. Some members could be paying thousands of dollars in insurance annually, which are not currently paying if this goes into effect. And again, people just simply are not going to comply when they're not going to be able to meet the demands. I know last time that it was mentioned a lot of people who were opposing this were simply hobbyists who may not have been credentialed. So I provided you with over 30 pages of documentation here. I kind of summarized it on the first 2 pages. We just cherry-picked 12 people from the people who signed this. Kind of looks similar to an affidavit. You've got 24 pages of those signed. It's 2 pages each, signed by the 12 experts. Over half of them have a PhD. The first one that you'll find in there is actually a lawyer who specializes in animal law and also holds a Master's of Science in Conservation Biology. So again, to look at the credentialed people that I just gave you there, and again, you can read their oppositions to this. Most of them are about the same on those 2-page documents. The first one is edited a bit. There may be a couple others who had some additional points, but most of them you'll see the 20 points. And then at the end of this, you'll see the last comment that USARC submitted on January 19th. So last Friday, we sent that in. It's very similar to ones we've sent in previously, almost for the last 3 years now. And again, not a whole lot has changed. And it's just, again, we're just pointing out the fact over and over, it's going to be extremely hard and onerous for people to come into compliance with this. And if, as the last speaker said, if public safety is truly what you want, you need to pass something so that the owners of these animals can come into compliance with it and it not be overbearing on them. Again, it's highlighted here. I know you won't be able to look at it all now, but we went to a lot of time. And again, I didn't throw every expert at you. We could have supplied dozens more. We just cherry-picked 12 of them. So I just hope that you'll take a look at this, reconsider your vote no today. And again, there's just a few details that need ironed out. It wouldn't be that hard to do, I think, if the new people at Animal Control, again, they're being affected by the last person who was ahead of this. And I think we can iron it out and get an ordinance that works for Washoe County. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Goss. Mr. Bob Pelton, followed by Miss Kathy Brandhorst. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Bob Pelton for the record. During the last meeting, it's my understanding that the general consensus of this board was to remove raptor from the text entirely. As of the day, the word raptor is still listed as a Tier 1 exotic animal. Now, back in 2010 through 2014, the Nevada Department of Wildlife worked with falconers and the public to write a set of rules and regulations. They are NAC 503.200 and NAC 503.474, which we abide by today to ensure the successful future of falconry. To possess a raptor is not easy. First, you have to have a sponsor and serve a 2-year apprenticeship program. During that time, the apprentice is only allowed certain raptors, such as the red-tailed hawk or a kestrel falcon. Second, your facilities must be inspected by the Nevada Department of Wildlife to ensure that the enclosures are adequate and the person has all the proper equipment. Third, you must take a written test dealing with bird identification, health, treatment, and the welfare of the bird. Fourth, then if you are successful, you'll be issued a general falconry license, which is renewed every year. We're also governed by the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. All of our birds are banded, registered, and documented. So I don't know what the process is for people to obtain an exotic animal, but I'm sure it's not as involved as possessing a raptor. With all that being said, I do not see the purpose of listing raptors as a Tier 1 exotic animal and would like to see the word raptor removed from the text entirely. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Pelton. Ms. Kathy Brandhorst, followed by Mr. John Potash.
My name is Kathy Brandhorst, and I'm also the United States President. Animal abuse, it's really hard to take because most of those animals are pets. And you have abused them so badly with bullet holes, chopping their heads, switching their heads from cats to dogs, from dogs to cats. You know, even though you have been using a whip to whip them. But these pets have license, they have collars, and yet you still treat them like they are animals that have never been trained. You abuse them so badly that they don't understand why they have to be whipped with a horse whip or bullet holes because you can't stand their brains. The brains are working and they tell exactly what's going on. But you don't like that idea at all. So you're going to take out your electric chainsaw and you're going to chop them up they're screaming, they're hollering, they're yelling, help us, bring us some help. We need an adult who is a good person to help us here. Why should they suffer? Because you're actually listening to their brain and you don't like the idea at all? Well, it's not only animal abuse that these animals have been experiencing. And you have the guns, you have the arrows, you have the bows and arrows, you also have the rifles, and you think you have the power because the animals are pets. These pets are already trained to tell us, you know, who you are. If you're a murderer, a robber, a department store robber, you're also a bank robber. But you don't like that at all because you're going to have to destroy the animal in order to help yourselves. And this is the real reason for doing this to pets who have already been trained.
Mr. John Potash, and followed by Mr. Mauricio Duran.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. As always, there's a lot of topics, and it's going to be difficult to cover it all in 3 minutes. I'm hoping that you have received and had a chance to read some of my emails that made some, what we believe are fair and reasonable recommendations to the change. We worked on this with a group of professionals. So I'm just going to talk on a couple things. The tier list. Aside from a couple of differences, such as the amount of liability insurance and vet certificates, the permit process is the same for Tier 2 and Tier 3 animals. Being that Tier 2 is mostly about innocuous animals, those that are no more dangerous than maybe like a golden retriever, I would recommend maybe an exotic license versus a permit, something similar to that of a dog license. Require an application, a small fee, maybe a picture of the animal, picture of the enclosure, and keep it simple. This way, you know where the animals are, people will come into compliance, this way, anyways, yeah, it'll get people to come into compliance. Of course, with this, we have to work on the tier lists a little bit. Need to shift around a few animals here and there, but that's easily achieved. Also, something I sent in the emails. Liability insurance. It seems that this subject is being beat to death, but I think it's for good reason. From an outside perspective, liability insurance seems like a good idea from people who don't work with these animals on a daily basis. From an experienced point of view, we all know that it's not necessary. The only time I can see the need for liability insurance is for animals used out in a public setting. For animals kept in a private home under proper caging conditions and requirements, the need for this is non-existent. For sure, harmless Tier 2 animals that are listed primarily for welfare reasons, liability insurance does nothing helpful. In fact, as Tim stated, it would be a significant financial burden. The snake caging requirements are completely unnecessary and could actually create more of a negative welfare situation. Even the USDA and AVMA doesn't put hard standards in place like that, more things like appropriate to the species. Animal welfare, as somebody who deals in animal welfare on a regular basis as a member of UNR's Institutional Animal Care and Use Committee, it seems to be used as a catch-all for things that don't have other reasoning. In summary, I mean, if staff doesn't want to work with us, let them work with the biologists, the professors, and the experts at UNR. They have a pretty good handle on this, obviously. I would love nothing more than for us to all be able to work together, come up with something great, stand up here before you and say, hey, we worked on something that we're proud of, here you go, and support it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Potash. Mr. Mauricio Duran.
Good afternoon. For the record, my name is Mauricio Duran, Nevada born and raised, and currently serve the great Silver State in the Nevada National Guard. I agree with everything that has been said in opposition to the passing of this bill, a tier system can work. There are several places that have shown that they can work, but they need to be built with common sense. And there are people that will be falling under this law that want to be a part of the process. And going back to the Washoe County mission, it's about working together. And a lot of us haven't been included in this process, people with experience. A lot of the people in support of this ordinance have not been completely accurate with the information provided, such as last meeting, you were told that the state of Nevada does not have regulations against exotic animals, when in fact it actually does. It even lists fish on there, certain species of fish and invertebrates that aren't included in these tier systems. That alone right there should be enough to bring this back to the drawing board. Along with that, a lot of the expertise with certain animals on these tier systems should be put into question when it comes to the people in support of this. A lot of these people may just be responding out of fear. I actually have experience working with venomous reptiles, and I also have experience working with dogs. One of my things is training dogs to avoid rattlesnakes, for example. And I'll tell you right now, the most dangerous part of the job is actually walking the dogs, because the dogs react a lot more unpredictably than the snakes do. Like I said, I agree with all that had been said before me. We do want to be a part of this process and work with you guys. We aren't trying to establish something lawless. We do believe that there should be regulations, but they have to come from common sense. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Durrett. Mr.
Madam
Duran,
Chair?
excuse me.
For the record, I was provided with 9 emails from the public with public comment. I believe everyone on the board has seen them, but I'll just make them part of the record.
Okay, thank you, Madam Clerk. I see no more public comments, so we'll close public comment and bring it back to the board. And on my board list is Commissioner Lucy.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Unfortunately, I was not able to be in attendance at the first reading of this a couple weeks ago. However, I did watch the meeting online and participate from home while recovering. However, I want to bring up a few points. I do believe that this policy that we've been working on for 2 years has been well vetted and has been discussed many a times. I've had discussions with the current chairman of the Eureka County Commission and also Nevada Department of Agriculture state veterinarian J.J. Gokachia. Dr. J.J. Gokachia. He has, I have had numerous discussions in regards to our current code as drafted or has been submitted for ordinance, and he feels confident that is the right measure for us to move forward with in regards to passing this ordinance, as Clark County has done. He has mentioned to me the challenges that many other counties within the state have addressed because of a lack of ordinance and because of a lack of understanding in regards to when it comes to exotic animals, specifically Nye County and Pahrump. They've had a number of incidents in regards to big animal cat owners continually disregarding any sensibility act and acting on their own. I do notice that we have removed the spay and neuter, but he had recommended that should have stayed in because it is a smart way to approach certain things. Obviously, the neutering of spay and neutering of reptiles is not something that can be accomplished. However, for large cats and different things like this, there are bad actors. There may be good individuals out there that continue to manage large animals and exotics in a very responsible way. However, there are many bad actors out there that continue to skirt the law and do different things and raise animals illegally, breed animals illegally. There are many zoological agencies throughout the United States that have breeding programs for these animals and continue to breed these animals in captivity and for a number of reasons. And feel that those are satisfied the needs for the U.S. in regards to this. So the reality of having breeding capabilities for residents that are keeping these cats and the animals not for any other reason than as a personal gain should be something that should be challenged. But as we have currently drafted and based upon the direction of this board, I feel that this time the ordinance as drafted with the recommended changes from the first reading are suitable. I think moving forward with this ordinance as drafted in today's measure, even with the insurance requirements, are reasonable. And so I would make a motion to accept and adopt the ordinance, which is now.
Commissioner Lucy, could you
yes.
just hold that for
yes,
me? Because
I
we
can.
have some other.
Yes, I will.
Some other comments.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
That's all right. However you would like, ma'am. Sure.
Commissioner Herman.
It just kind of blows me away. It's the most unconstitutional thing we could do to these animal owners, the way it is. It's like the old saying, you know, you keep doing the same thing over and over and expect a different answer. When we do have the possibility of doing it one more time, but get everybody together on it, because there's people that don't know everything that are involved here. And there's others that know this piece, and somebody's got this piece. And if we put it all together right, and we'll have something we can be proud of. I mean, I just feel like our intelligence is being insulted by some of the poor information that's written here. I hate doing a poor job. I like to do a good job. It doesn't make me happy to be part of something that's going to hurt somebody in this manner. And I would sure like to see us not pass this right now, give it another little bit of time when then everybody can get together on it, put in. And I was present at one of the actual workshops, but it was the first year I was in the commission. You know, it was a long time ago. And before this was put together, you know, there was no input from people who know what they're talking about. So you heard a vet last time who specializes in exotic animals, and I mean, she couldn't have said it any more clearly. You know, we're not doing this right. So I would hope that we don't pass this. I will vote against it.
Thank you, Commissioner Herman. Madam Schul, will you come forward, please? And I'd like to ask you a couple of questions and have you respond to a couple of things. Thank you, Mrs. Schul. I appreciate it. I just have a couple of questions. I know that we changed the timing for filing an appeal to 30 days. That's in the regulations. And we did the spay neuter. We put raptors into Tier 1. Isn't that essentially the same as moving raptors out of our regulation? Because there's no requirement for permitting on Tier 1?
Cheyenne Schell for the record. Commissioner Burke-Bigler. We moved the raptors from Tier 2 to Tier 1 because they're still an exotic animal by the definition that's in code. However, we don't wish to permit them. So that's why they're in Tier 1. There's no requirements for insurance permitting of any kind, no regulation.
So
Animal Services would not regulate
They're completely regulated by the state, so we're not going to regulate raptors at all.
Correct.
Thank you. That's what I thought. So I'm curious if you investigated. I know that I seem to recall that at some time in the past, and we've been doing this for so long, that frankly, I can't remember all the details, but it seems to me like there was an investigation done on what the cost of these insurance policies would be, and that it wasn't $1,000, it was a reasonable amount of money. Do you have records of that?
Cheyenne Schell for the record again, Commissioner Burke-Bigler. What I have here is an Exhibit B from a presentation that we gave to this board for policy direction and discussion in 2016. And what staff did is we contacted a variety of insurance agencies that insured exotic animals, both Tier 2 and Tier 3 animals. And so what we put together was an average, but at that point in time, what we were suggesting was $1 million coverage for those Tier 3 animals, which we have adjusted a couple of times back down to $250,000 for Tier 3, and then $25,000 for those Tier 2. So for what we found on Tier 2 type animals, for example, and this varies widely depending on the type of animal, but for a Burmese python, your premium, you could be looking at $400 to $600 per year. And then for Tier 3 animals, for a $250,000 policy to a $1 million policy. So again, that's a wide range of coverage. For a chimp, it would be $3,000 to $5,000 per year. For a tiger, it would be $2,500 to $3,500 per year. For a serval, it would be $1,300 to $1,700. And again, this is from 2016, so a couple of years old. But these were the numbers that we had put together as part of our presentation to you all.
Okay. So is there, do you have any proposal in this? And I didn't see it, so I don't think it's there, but just for clarification on the record, if there is, the testimony has been that there are other types of animals that we have on this list that are licensed at the state and permitted at the state. Are you taking reciprocity? Are you looking at the possibility of when someone comes forward and they have a Tier 2 something, whatever, and it's already licensed through the state for whatever reason, through NDOW or for whatever reason, taking that, permitting that, you know, whatever they call it, because now I don't think they're going to call them licenses, but taking that through that information rather than requiring additional from us. So
Cheyenne, go ahead.
There's not any reciprocity at all in here?
Cheyenne Shell for the record. So the way the tier system is set up, we have our permit system would be in addition to. There are some animals that are required to have permission from NDOW, for example, to have within our county. So our system is set up to be an additional permit system so that we have closer regulation outside of the scope of what necessarily maybe USDA or federal guidelines would require or state, so that we have some regulation here within our county.
Okay. So I know that one of the testimony that was presented was that for Tier 2 exotics, you do a permit rather than a license. Didn't we try to do that before, and the presentation was don't do a permit, do a license? I mean, it seems to me like we've been going back and forth on this particular issue for some time.
Commissioner, I do not recall us talking about a license versus a permit. However, we did talk about when we came to this board in 2016 for policy direction, we entertained the idea of a special use permit through CSD. However, when we outlined the staff time and hours that would go into that process, it was decided that it was not the most streamlined process.
Okay. Then one of the emails that we received, and I'm sure it's one that's been submitted to the record, which we received from someone who doesn't live in the state of Nevada, by the way, and we received a number of those. But one point that was made back to me when I questioned why this person was asking about exotic animals when she lives in Ohio, was she came back and she said one of the problems she sees with our regulation is that if you are fostering dogs or cats, like from the Humane Society, I have 2 little pups, and you know what a nut I am for little dogs. And if I decided that I wanted to foster a puppy that was sick and that needed a safe home or something, would I then need to get a license from you if I had 4 pups? So I would have to go and get a separate license from you to be a foster parent from the Humane Society?
Cheyenne Shell for the record again, Commissioner, that would fall under the variance permit, and yes, that would be a requirement of someone who is going to have an animal in Washoe County for more than 30 days.
Okay. That bothers me just a little bit. I'm not planning on doing that, by the way, largely because my daughter said she's going to do a senior citizen intervention if I get another dog. So I'm not planning on doing that. But I just thought I'd ask for the question, for the purposes of a question. And that's all I have, but I see Commissioner Hartung also has a question. Thank you, Ms. Schull. Kitty, is there anything else you wanted to clarify?
I'm concerned because I remember distinctly, Ms. Schul, I remember distinctly that one of the things that we discussed was a per permit cost for the insurance coverage. So you mentioned a price for a Burmese python. So tell me that price again.
Cheyenne Scholl, for the record, Commissioner Hartung, that was $400 to $600 for a Burmese python.
Okay, so we'll just average it at 5. We'll just say it's $500. So if I have 3 of those, I'm $1,500 a year because I've got to have an insurance policy on each one.
Again, I think it goes back to how the insurance writes their policies, whether or not that increase goes up. But for example, in our dangerous dog code, the requirement within our dangerous dog code is $250,000 liability insurance policy per dog.
Per dog, yeah, I understand.
Yes.
I understand, but I don't think that all of these animals will qualify as dangerous like dogs, like certain dogs will. I'm just, I think we're creating a policy for something that's non-existent, and I again thought we had agreed that it was a $25,000 policy per permit and a $250,000 policy for, again, per permit. So thank you. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Commissioner Hartung. All right, we have any other comments from commissioners? Commissioner Lucy.
Madam Chair. I'd like to make a motion at this time. And just really quickly on to Commissioner Hartung's point, I believe that Burmese pythons don't even qualify for under our Tier 2 license or our 2-tier exotic animal until they're greater than 12 feet in length and in excess of 30 pounds in weight. So that would be correct. So I could potentially have one, a young Burmese python that would be considered a Tier 1 as long as it's not 12 feet in length. I mean, I'm not a Burmese python owner or know anything about Burmese pythons, but.
Cheyenne Scholl, for the record, Commissioner Lucy, it's what the animal will mature to.
Oh, okay. So it is.
It would.
Okay.
It would apply.
Well, needless to say, I still think the way it's drafted is smart, and I think after reviewing it through my professionals and through the individuals that I've spoken with, I feel that this is not an onerous ordinance, and I don't think this is overwhelming. And I think if you're going to own an animal or just it is a choice to do so, and you need to know that up front, just as feeding an animal costs money, just as vet services cost money. If you're going to have an exotic animal, and I think we had heard that today from the public, that public safety is still an issue as well. That this is. So at this time, if I may, I would like to make a motion to accept Ordinance 1609 into the record as drafted.
Second. I have a motion and a second. We've done public comment. Do we have any additional comments?
I do. I have an additional comment.
Okay, Madam.
Thank you.
Ms. Vice Chair.
Thank you, and I am also supporting this for many of the reasons in which Commissioner Lucy did outline, but I have to state for the record, since I think I've been woefully misunderstood, I have owned a red-tailed boa, a ball python, an iguana, a gecko, a tarantula, and then I got married 19 and a half years ago, and my husband's scared to death of them. I would have the same thing, but I would provide with them the responsibility to my neighbors, to my family, to the animal itself that's vulnerable and voiceless, if that was allowed. We have had mice, too, and a rat, but she did not love either. And I know those are not exotic. So I love these reptiles. I think they're fascinating. When I was a child going to the Sacramento Zoo, which we went every year because we were only 40 miles away from Sacramento, my poor mom would have to escort me, because she was always a chaperone, through the reptile house because she did not like it, and that's the only place I wanted to stay. So that has nothing to do that I have any fear of reptiles. I don't love reptiles. It has everything to do to come in compliance and conformance with what the state has asked us to do, and we have a place to start. And I would like to have a quarterly report from Ms. Scholl of how many people have applied for this, because we know people in here right now are not even in compliance with what we have today. Any hiccups you've seen, any alterations you'd like to do, if you could start doing that quarterly for the first year. We can always come back and revise, but I do want a full report on people that have self-identified as having and housing these animals in our community and that are not in any way under conformance of what even existed yesterday and now what exists today. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Ms. Vice Chair. Mr. Lucarelli.
Madam Chair, just wanting to confirm my understanding, the motion was to accept. Typically what we do with ordinances is adopt. So are we adopting?
Adopting, I apologize, adopt the ordinance 1609.
And Mr. Liparelli, the addition of the request for a report that Commissioner Vice Chair brought in, does that need to be added to the motion?
Madam Chair, can we do that in a second motion?
Okay, we can do that in a second motion.
Yeah. Madam Chair, that's the way I construed it. It's not really part of the motion.
So it's just staff direction?
Aspiration, and if the Commissioner wants to follow up on that in future meetings, I'm sure she will.
Okay, good. All right, so we have a motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Nay. Nay.
Please cast your vote on the screen and affirm your vote. Motion carries 3-2. Mr. Manager.
Madam Chair, next item is also a public hearing item. This is item 16. This is a second reading, adoption of an ordinance amending Washington County Code, Chapter 55.
Oh, Madam Clerk, I'm waiting for you to read it for me, Mr. Manager. Madam Clerk, would you please read this for us?
Certainly. If adopted, this will bear ordinance number 1610, an ordinance amending Washoe County Code, Chapter 55, by vacating the Animal Control Board, by labeling the existing permit to keep more than 3 adult dogs and/or 7 adult cats within the congested areas of the county a variance permit, by amending provisions related to the application for a variance permit, the processing of a variance permit, the requirements of and conditions imposed upon a variance permit, the approval or denial of a variance permit, the revocation of a variance permit, and the appeal process, and by modifying containment requirements for keeping more than 3 adult dogs and/or 7 adult cats. This was previously issued Bill number 1793.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. I have some public comment. Shall we go to public comment, Commissioners? So we'll start with Mr. Tim Stoffel, followed by Mr. Bill Majoria. And you need to tell me once again. I'll get it down one of these days, I promise. Mr. Majora. Mr. Stoffel.
Tim Stoffel, 10515 Trail Drive, Reno, Nevada. I've been on the Animal Control Board for 2 years, and I have seen a number of exotic cases come before them. And I cannot remember a single case where Animal Services recommended approval of an exotic permit. And indeed, the board did not approve some of the permits, but some of these people were biased. They were not following the instructions that they were given and instead going with their personal views concerning what the Humane Society of the United States told them. As you have heard from us many, many times, this is an animal rights group, and I feel they're behind all this legislation that we're looking at today, and that has just been shoved down our throats. But in any case, the thing is that if this, it's already done, all done and gone for the exotics, but now you're going to do this for the pet owners. And so the result is, I have a funny feeling that a lot of people who would otherwise be able to get their permits and have a reason to do this before an unbiased board are going to have to seek litigation. So now, we're going to become a county where if you want to have, more than a couple, 3 dogs or 7 cats, or exotics for any reason, you're basically might as well set aside $10,000 or $15,000 to take the county to court. I don't think this is very fair to animal owners. You've already slapped a big insurance requirement on them. You saw how much the insurance costs. I could feed a tiger for what that insurance costs, by the way, for a year with expensive commercial feline food. That's how expensive this insurance is. In any case, I think that trying to dissolve this Animal Control Board is a major disservice to this community, and it's a shameful thing to do. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Stoffel. Mr. Majora.
Bill Majora, right next to Virginia Foothills. I support keeping the Animal Control Board, so I oppose this proposal, because right now what we have is Animal Services can be pretty dictatorial, and it's expensive to go to the courts, and that's really the only other choice if you can't get through Animal Services with a permit. So I would like to see something that would make it a little cheaper to keep animals and comply with the rules. And that's what I regard the Animal Board as, a cheaper way to contest a dictatorial decision from Animal Services that can refuse or reject a permit application, even though it complies with all the rules and requirements. They can still reject it. They can still recommend rejection. With an animal board, you've got another step before it gets expensive.
Thank you, Mr. Majora. I have next on the list Mr. Garth Elliott, who I don't see in the room, so we'll go to Mr. Sam McCall, followed by Ms. Kathy Brandhorst.
Hello. So obviously the biggest issue with the permitting from the county, yes, a lot of people do not have the current permits that they would require from the county because they've been rejected by essentially the board. And if you got rid of the animal control board, animal services, as they have mentioned, usually does refuse to give out permits. I don't know why that is, but if you look on animal rights websites and such, they do recommend that to, essentially refuse permits, thereby making it really difficult and financially expensive, my apologies, through the process of litigation to own said animals or apply for said permits. I could be wrong. I want to say only maybe 10 people have permits, not because 10 people have signed up for permits, but because only 10 have gone through because they refuse to hand out permits. If you do vacate the Animal Control Board, you are essentially creating a system that lacks checks and balances, which is contrary to how a Republican form of government should be ran. You are going to give power to a small group of people and no ability essentially to repeal any decisions or review any decisions. And that is not only from a position of an animal owner, but just from a legal position, very disturbing. And I would like you to consider that. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. McCall. Ms. Kathy Brandhorst.
My name is Kathy Brandhorst, and I am the United States President. Snakes have been swallowing humans. I hope you have been destroying these snakes. They don't deserve to be alive. Also, I just wanted to tell you, too, that I hope you have been destroying these snakes after swallowing a human body. But pets are also kidnapped by people who are not supposed to be on the property. You are trespassers. You do not live there, so stay off the property. Don't abuse the dogs by throwing rocks at them or by whipping them right on the doorsteps of our homes. I've heard the guns go off too while a pet was just sitting on the porch. Pets are kidnapped every hour of the days. And I just wanted to point it out, kidnapping other people's animals that have already been trained, and then you try to disapprove of that because you have to abuse them. The abusing part of an animal is your part, isn't it? Because you have to keep the brain quiet. You don't want to hear it, that you're the bank robber, that you're the store robber, that you are the department store robber. You had to kill because you were caught in the act. Locking them up also is another problem. You will lock them up, and you'll leave them there until they pass out with starvation, nothing to drink. This is another abuse that you're using against pets. Also vacating the Animal Control Board. What are you trying to say? That you're going to set the dog outside the animal control area and make sure that the animal is frozen to death? That has also been happening.
Thank you, Madam. Thank you, Ms. Bradhurst. I see no other public comments. We will bring this back to the board. Commissioner Hartung, did you have a point you wanted to bring up?
Gladly, Madam Chair. I thought
Ms. Scholl, would you come forward, please?
I'm looking in the staff report, and it said standard permit conditions would include spay and neuter of all dogs, applying standard exceptions with documentation from a veterinarian requesting an exemption due to animal health. What about breeders? I thought we had removed that because, you know, people, and I know that there are breeders out there who are less than perfect, but there's a whole bunch. I have breeders in my own neighborhood who do a great job. I mean, they wonderful conditions and breed purebred animals.
Cheyenne Schill for the record. Commissioner Hartung, can you repeat what the question was? Sorry, I was approaching.
I thought we had removed the requirement for standard permit conditions would include spay and neuter of all dogs and cats.
It's on page 5 of your report.
Of the staff report.
Cheyenne Schill for the record. I believe what you're looking at is the history. This was what we presented previously on board meetings. This is the historical changes that we've made. The very last changes that we made, you will find
6 and 7.
On page 7 and 8, we removed the spay-neuter requirement. That was already removed prior to the first reading on the 9th.
Okay.
So the only changes that have been made since the 9th and today is the 14 days to 30 day for a revoked permit or a denied permit. They have the ability to appeal those 30 days rather than 14.
Okay, good.
Okay,
Anything else, Commissioner?
And we didn't change the number of dogs. I agree with Commissioner Burke-Bigler. 3 is a, I'd rather have 7 dogs and 3 cats. Personally.
Me too.
I'm just a dog guy. I know
I'm a
dogs
dog
bark
girl.
and they can be somewhat.
I like my doggies.
Cats, this is not a pejorative comment about cats, although they have their own way. They're not like my dog.
Okay.
I would rather see that number reversed.
So we've done public comment. Commissioner, Vice Chairman, what's your name?
I don't know.
I feel the same.
I
Vice
would
Chairman
like
Jones.
to adopt ordinance number 1610 with the caveat that this actually provides better government oversight, as there will be elected officials on this Animal Services Board who will be keeping a tight eye as well on the budget, because the great voters of this fabulous county gave so much money in 2001 when we did our voter initiative that I worked very hard on. I think it's important that we are good stewards and watchdogs of property taxes, and that's what it is, a diversion. I mean, we don't have a lot of property taxes coming in anymore, so I want to just state that for the record. That's my motion.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any other comments? Everybody who's in favor, please say aye. And
aye.
Cast your vote. Opposed?
Nay.
Please affirm your vote when it comes up on the screen. Who hasn't? Everybody's voted. The motion passes 3-2. And so we will move on. Thank you. Mr. Manager.
Madam Chair, the next item is item 17. And just before I read that, we don't have a need for discussion on this. If we could just have the board accept this report. So it's a
Okay.
discussion update pertaining to the Board of County Commissioners quarterly dashboard report.
Second.
Do we have any public comment? I see none listed. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Please cast your vote when it comes on the screen. Yeah. Mm-hmm. She did it for you. Okay, everybody, everybody who's in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All those, please cast your vote and please affirm your vote on the screen. Motion carries. Motion carries 5-0. Thank you very much. We will move on. We did our closed session, so we're on to 19. Mr. Manager.
Item 19 is public comment, our final public comment of the day. Limited to 3 minutes per person and may pertain to matters both on and off the commission agenda.
Thank you. I have 2 people signed in, Ms. Tammy Holtstill, followed by Ms. Kathy Brandhorst. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Tammy Holtstill, Lemon Valley Swan Lake Recovery Committee, for the record. There was a comment made earlier about a survey for development and what people want in the community. I think you need to look at the Truckee Meadows regional planning surveys before duplicating your efforts and wasting money there. As far as Honey Lake versus North Valleys, Honey Lake does not have the population of the North Valleys. Honey Lake does not have the affluent waters going into it like we do in the North Valleys. We have over 3 million gallons going into Swan Lake a day. We also have an overbuilt Golden Valley, front of the Lemon Valley, and Stead that are feeding the stormwaters into. It's not the sheeting action like Honey Lake. Those are the differences. There's also the fact that they don't have aquifers like White Lake that Washoe County is injecting into underneath White Lake. Also, you have Golden Valley where there's a recharge aquifer that they're recharging. And that there has been no communication testing done to make sure that that aquifer is not feeding underneath Swan Lake. So there are issues out there that make them totally different animals and not to compare to. Again, it comes back to the golden rule. Do unto others as you would like them to do unto you. From what I've seen of this board, I would be looking seriously at myself to say, have we done the right things for Lemon Valley? Have we been stepping forward and doing what needs to be done, what is necessary? And seriously do a soul search, because some of us residents don't think that's happening, especially with when we hear comments in the background, when we watch the recordings, and people coming into our homes and dictating if we're going to speak at an open meeting law or not, open meeting. So those are the things that make us have opinions of this commission and the lack thereof. You're supposed to be helping us, like everybody's been saying there. We work together. Us residents have been trying to work with you, and we're not getting it in return. So have a good evening. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Kathy Brandhorst, followed by Mr. Phil Goss.
My name is Kathy Brandhorst, and I am the United States President. I just wanted to tell you I still live on C Street in Sparks, and I wanted to mention that I did move to Sky Mountain, and in May. I was living there for 3 months, May, June, and July. And then in August, I kind of didn't understand what happened to my memory, but I'm hollering out there, where do I live? Nobody could tell me that I was living on Sky Mountain. Oh my. No, but I was watching television, and I did hear that is my blood splattered all over the rocks in Virginia City. And also my memory has been lost again because somebody is trying to cover up something here about Sky Mountain. I live there and you don't. Is that the biggest problem here? Well, I just wanted to mention back on C Street where I live, you don't live there next door to me. Only one lady that lives there. And she looks really bad every day. She looks worse and worse every day. I don't even identify her as it's the person that really lives there. Oh my. And you people have to beat her, put the bullet holes in her to keep the mouth shut. Yes, I know that her 4.5-year-old granddaughter was raped by an adult. And the adult is still walking the streets, still raping women, still raping children, and still getting away with it. And I see the abuse again. Is that my blood on the rocks? Oh. You know, that is my blood. I heard this on television. And you're still getting away with more murders, too. You haven't been, this has not been resolved. It's still going on. It's never going to be resolved at all because you're holding back. You still need a place to live. And you've been evicted here, you've been evicted there, and then you come back again because you need a place to live.
Thank you, Ms. Brandhorst. Mr. Phil Goss.
Hello again, Commissioners. Phil Goss with the United States Association of Reptile Keepers. I know it's done and over, and Chapter 55 is now going to be on the books. I just wanted to bring up to Commissioner Lucy that he brought up a great point. There are bad actors, and certainly there are problems with some people who keep, whether it's dogs, cats, exotic animals, no matter what it is. But I hate to see an ordinance go into place, which it's already gone into place, that's going to punish the people who just want to be responsible and comply. You heard how much the liability insurance is going to cost, so I hope maybe there can be some changes in the future. Again, I know it's on the books, but I would just like you to sit down and look like you're going to get one of these animals and how much you have to go through. Again, we weren't opposed to the cage inspections. We weren't opposed to secondary security, secondary containment. We weren't opposed to any of that. There may have been some outspoken people who didn't show up to speak who were opposed to that, but everyone that I spoke to is a member of our association. Everyone that I spoke to here, again, we weren't opposed to that stuff. You can't because some radicals are saying, you know, we don't want a law, we want a lawless society, a lawless Washoe County. Those aren't the people who are showing up and speaking who wanted to be in compliance. So I'm sorry, I know you hear from those people. I know your jobs aren't easy. But again, those weren't the people that were here speaking, and they just wanted to see a common sense regulation put into place. So I hope maybe animal control is still willing to work with us, maybe fix the per animal issue, that again, that's on the books. So you will need a liability insurance policy for each animal rather than just a blanket policy. So there are still some issues. And again, I would just ask each one of you to sit down and say, if I was going to get this animal, what would I have to go through in order to get a permit? And I think you'll kind of realize just how onerous the regulation is. And thank you for your time and have a good day.
Thank you, Mr. Goss. Mr. Goss, the clerk wants to speak with you. Okay, that's all the public comment I see, so we will close public comment, bring it back to the board. Mr. Manager.
Item 20 is our Commissioner and County Manager's announcements, reports, updates, requests for information, or topics for future agendas.
Do you have anything? Okay, Commissioners? Seeing nothing, we will close it, and we are adjourned.